outside?
No, I believe he was outside the home.
Yeah, Felipe
Outside.
Rowe has said that he was inside the home and he was at some point on the floor in the home. In any event, this is all video that was shot. You can see the anger of those who are there throwing anything they can get their hands on at the vans that were carrying the agents and Elián.
And Michael, as we're watching these pictures, we now have regained contact with Ninoska Perez from the Cuban American National Foundation. As you watch these pictures, your reaction, Ms. Perez?
Ninoska, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Ninoska, I don't know if you're watching Channel 10, but if you are, we're showing you are not. All right, well then let me ask you, what do you think, it's Michael Putney, Ninoska, what do you think the family, Lázaro Maris Laces, can achieve? We understand they will be flying to Washington this afternoon. What do you think they can achieve there?
I don't know what they can achieve, Michael. Today I'm really ashamed to be an American. I could not believe those images that I was watching on television. There was no need to do this. The family was negotiating on good faith. Now you have the spokesperson for the White House lying through a press conference saying that it was done. I think he used the word in a careful manner when you saw the photographs of a gun pointing at a child.
Yeah, he said, I wrote it down, this was a careful and limited operation, was the way Joe Lockhart characterized it, and you clearly disagree.
Definitely. Do you look at the image you have on camera right now? Look at the face of that child. Tell me if there was any need for this.
Ms. Perez, how do you respond to those who are looking at these images and saying, well, you know what, the family had a chance to avoid this had they simply followed the law and turned the child over?
No, the family was negotiating up to the last minute.
They've been negotiating for months, Ms. Perez.
Should have come to get his child. It should have been the father who should have been at the airport so that his child would not take that 2.5-hour trip alone and scared. And it's so bad that the American government is caving into a dictatorship with whom they don't even have any relations.
Ninoska, it's Glenna Milberg. The last of the offers that the family had faxed on the phone while just before this was going on really had nothing to do with turning over the custody.
Their feelings within the law.
Mr. Mayor, is there anything that you plan to do to give people, and as we're speaking with you, we're looking at video right now of an officer down, that would be a Florida Highway Patrol officer at 42nd Avenue and 18th Northwest. Don't know how that happened at this point. But Mr. Mayor, is there anything that you're planning to give these people a place or a time where they can come together and vent some of this feeling as opposed to doing it out on the street?
Well, I just left a meeting with some 50 of the top individuals that are in the leadership of the main the Cuban organizations, Cuban American organizations in Miami. Mayor Pinellas joined me there, and we have gone over several plans of doing just that, what you're saying, and other things within the law.
Mr. Mayor, some people may be critical that while Elián was here, you and Mayor Alex Pinellas were out in front of the House speaking at the podium. You were there so people could hear what you had to say, but now largely the two of you have been silent. We've not really heard a lot from either of you, and that right now maybe some people who do really respect the two of you here in the city would act upon your wishes that they remain calm if you would maybe go to the podium in front of the House there.
Well, what do you think that I've been doing since 5:30 this morning? I got to the House, maybe you weren't up at the time, maybe that's why you missed it, but I got up to that House.
I saw you.
Before 6 a.m. Today, and I went there precisely to do that and ask the people to, no matter how much hurt we all have, that we have to react with our heads and do things within the law. I've been doing that since this morning. I've been, in particularly with the Spanish television stations, radio stations that will reach the majority of the Cuban American population. I've been pleading to have calm and restraint in this community, just like I am doing with you now, and I have done with many of the other stations.
Joe,
to say that we have not been up front from the first moment, from the first hour, that's not fair to say that.
Joe,
I was the first official before no other came a long time after me that was there from the beginning with my wife.
Agreed, and I saw you early this morning. I agree with that, but I think some people have right now, while there are situations going on 27th Avenue, perhaps some people need to hear "Be Calm" again, and we appreciate you being with us.
Joe, this is Elliot Rodriguez, and I know that you have been out there and you have been on the English media as well as the Spanish media, which is oh so important in a situation like this, explaining to people that they need to be calm. But we have a serious situation right now. What is the posture of the police department? Because earlier today we saw that they pulled back a bit and then went back inside. What is the policy right now to handle this? And also, can we get some kind of a demonstration or some kind of peaceful rally for people to vent in a peaceful manner?
That's exactly why I was in the meeting with about 50 or so of the top Cuban American leadership of Miami to accomplish just what you are saying and to have everyone help in keeping things tranquil and keeping things peaceful within our city.
Well, what was decided, and when can the word on that possibly go out to everyone?
Well, you're getting an early start in the news that they'll be announcing soon once they finish that meeting there.
Okay.
How much longer do you expect that word to come out, Joe?
I would imagine the next half an hour to an hour they'll all come out where they're meeting at, and they'll make it official. But I'd like to add this also on our police officers. We had many police officers that were gassed with the pepper gas that was thrown there early this morning also. It was just not our citizens, men, women, and children that were pepper gassed there, but also police officers that unfortunately were not told exactly what was going to be happening by some that knew beforehand.
Okay, Miami Mayor Joe Carollo, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us this afternoon. We want to take you now back out live to CBS 4's Gary Nelson, who's in the thick of things there on 27th Avenue. Gary.
Well, we continue to see the presence of these riot police here in this intersection and in intersections around. You can see tear gas has been deployed just now, obviously, down the street there. And these fellows have just redonned their gas masks and are spreading out in anticipation of what we might expect will be another round of police trying to get folks to go home.
Go ahead, Gary.
Angela, I'm not hearing air audio in my ear now, but there we go. Okay.
Okay, good.
Now these police here are going to move on down the street because a block to the west of us, as Robert Lyons might be able to show you, a block to the west of us, folks have blocked traffic. Vehicles are stopped in the middle of the street. These riot police are moving that way. Now one has to wonder to what extent tear gas would be effective against people who are behind the wheels of automobiles. I don't know if, Robert, can you show them the vehicles down there that are blocking the street? There you go. And so there are a number of vehicles that are blocking the road there, folks with Cuban and American flags sticking out their windows and that sort of thing. This is an interesting situation as the police move in on that bit of blockage. I can tell you that the number of cars would appear to be no more than 3 or 4 deep. Mm-hmm. That white van parked cattywampus in the middle of the road.
Gary, are they abandoned or just people in those cars right now?
I don't know if Robert can show us whether there are people in those cars right now or not. I think that there are folks in those cars who have stopped their cars, who are continuing to block the road. Yes, Robert tells me he can see some drivers there. Interesting to see what police might do to ease that blockage. The tear gas has been used and been used very effectively against pedestrians out here, now the walking wounded, you might say. How you deal with folks behind the wheels of 2,000 pounds of machinery is another thing altogether.
Yes, indeed, it is, Gary. Okay, so we see that things are still relatively calm out there for now. Protesters now specifically on the sidewalks as well as the media, right, Gary?
Yes, we're off on the sidewalk. Occasionally we'll step one step into the street to see what's going on down the way, and the police will ask us to get back out of the street,
so
and I'm going to listen to what they say.
Yeah, oh yeah, so obviously Al DeRuthi, the photographer who was arrested, he was asked to get out of the street, and he hadn't. Do you know specifically what happened in Al's case?
I don't know that Al was asked to get out of the street, but it was a scene in which tear gas had earlier been deployed. Police were clearing the street. They had a couple of people in custody under arrest out there in the middle of the road. Now, a television news photographer chose to go out into the street to videotape it, and the police had absolutely no patience with him. They took him down and arrested him immediately. Just as earlier, when they deployed the tear gas and the pepper spray here on 2 occasions, it was deployed indiscriminately, the intent being to clear the area, and it was very effective. It choked me. It choked all of the reporters and photographers here who are not tear gas mask equipped.
Yeah. Okay, Gary, the chopper space is now reopened. You know, it's been inaccessible to us for a while, and Tony Jerez is in Chopper 4 right now. Tony, are you hovering over MIA, or where are you? You're above the scene down here on 27th Ave?
No, Angela, we're over Lejeune, Lejeune Road on the east side of the airport. This is the area, I don't know if you're familiar with where the Flanagan's restaurant is, but it's just north of 836. What we have is another group of protesters made it all the way up here, and we have Metro responding now. Metro's field force out here.
Okay.
Virtually what's happened is the field force has shut down the street, and we've got a bunch of tourists here who I'm sure are waiting or trying to get a plane out of town who are going to be waiting here for a while.
So what you're shooting now, tell me, what is that right now? Where all the cars are backed up?
This is traffic coming off of 836
That's what I thought. Okay.
into the airport.
That is a bad place for traffic to be stopped, because that'll affect 836 traffic all the way back.
How far back does it go,
Well,
Tony?
this tie-up doesn't go too far back. It just goes to the off-ramp here.
Right, but it's going to get worse.
Yeah, it could get worse, and also with people trying to get to the airport, a majority of these are taxis, which I'm assuming are tourists trying to get into their
Right,
flights
so
and stuff.
Tony, if I could just jump in here. So if you're going westbound on 836 and you want to get off on Lejeune Road to go to the airport, which I imagine a lot of tourists who are staying on Miami Beach would be using, you're stuck in that nightmare, right, Tony?
Absolutely. You're going to be sitting in it for a while, at least until this crowd decides it's going to go away.
So if somebody needs to head to the airport, Tony, from that direction, what's the best way for them to go?
I would think they probably want to get off on Red Road and take perimeter.
Yeah, or I would also recommend taking the Airport Expressway, State Road 112, which is to the north of that, and getting off on that side.
They can do that, but also if you look up here, there's also another small group of protesters who have gotten their cars and they've come to a complete stop. This is, I think, 12th. This is right near the perimeter area here, near 836.
Okay, Tony, we're going to break away real quick. Thank you for joining us, and stay with us. Keep us posted on what's happening there. We need to get to Martin Savage, CNN correspondent Martin Savage, who's joining us right now live from Havana. Martin, has the word reached there at this point? Or people, as they are waking up today and getting their day started, becoming more aware of what's happening in Miami?
Well, they certainly are. By Cuban standards, this story has moved forward extremely quickly here in the Havana area. What has basically transpired at about 6:30 this morning, Cuban radio broke into normal programming and read a short statement basically saying that the boy had been retrieved from the home down there in Little Havana. Then about an hour later, there was a follow-up statement saying that the boy was safe, and also urging people to remain calm so that there would not be any signs of jubilation.
Martin, I need to put you on hold for just a second. I want to explain to people what they're seeing in the right portion of the screen there. You are looking at Lazaro Gonzalez, Maris Lacis, Delphine Gonzalez. We are told they are all leaving right now to head to Washington, D.C. They expressed earlier this morning that they wanted to go to Washington to see Elián, to make sure he was okay. Right now, Elián has been reunited with his father. They are in an undisclosed location, but it looks like the Gonzalez family here in South Florida, they are leaving to head to Washington, D.C. to check on the safety and the security of little Elián. I'm sorry, Martin, you were in the middle of talking to us from Havana. Please continue.
I was just saying that the report on Cuban radio was telling people not to go out for any sort of spontaneous demonstration of celebration. The government broadcast basically warning people that such images, if transmitted back to the United States, could possibly harm the legal action that is still to come in Elián's case. There has been no formal statement as yet coming from the government. That's expected to come later today, possibly at the evening tribunal. Cuban television did release a communique, and they have been showing the images on Cuban television, both of the raid that was conducted on the home and also of the ensuing aftermath there in Miami.
Martin, what are people on the street saying about it when they see those pictures of the federal marshals getting the boy forcibly out of the house?
Well, many of the people will tell you that they are pleased that the transfer of custody has taken place. They're not jubilant, they're not celebrating, they don't say it with a smile on their face. In fact, a number of them seem quite somber. There were some people we talked to, one woman in particular, who was upset by what she saw. She said that they scared the child and that greatly troubled her, and she had wished that perhaps the negotiations had gone on a bit longer. So I think the people here are sensitive to the same images that Americans have seen.
Is there any word, Martin, from the Havana side, any expectations being made public about when the boy might be returned to Cuba, if that in fact is what happens?
No, there has never been an exact date when they would say that the boy was going to come back to the United States, other than there was a date set initially by President Castro at the very beginning. But since that time, there has never been a follow-on date. The Cuban government realizes that this was going to be a lengthy process, realizes that today's transition is not a clear indication that this could be over soon. And as you've already heard Juan Miguel say, he is willing to remain in the United States with the boy until the legal proceedings are finished. And that could be some time, as we all know.
CNN's Martin Savage reporting live from Havana. We thank you for your report. We want to take you back out live now to the area around the airport. That's Lejeune in the airport area. Some protesters have made their way over there, and it's causing some problems. That ramp coming off the 836 there, as you can see, Metro-Dade police, they're now in the area there. But traffic is stopped up. Tony, can you hear me, Tony?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Tone, what does it appear that the police are doing to get things moving again?
It doesn't look like it. I think what they've done is they've had this line set up. The line basically, when we first arrived on scene, was back here where these cars are initially stopped, and they've forced the crowd back a little bit. They had a few arrests, which we got on tape, but it's pretty much been the line advances a little bit, they move back, and then they'll move the line up a little more.
But what about those people who are trying to get to the airport, getting on the off-ramp there, off of the ramp from 836? They're stuck, I guess.
Yeah, I haven't seen any efforts in getting those cars past.
And we see a lot of taxi cabs. I want to mention
Well, here we go. We've got actually some cars going now.
There you go. They are moving now.
Oh,
yeah. What happened was they had the field force was parked on the oncoming side.
Right, okay.
So it
they're
looks like
allowing
they
the cars
have
now single file to go through.
Okay, Tone, stand by. Thanks so much for that report. We want to take you back to CBS Sports' Gary Nelson. Gary.
Well, the acrid aroma of tear gas has again filled the air here on Flagler Street near 27th Avenue. Down the way, there was a group in the road and a number of people off on the side of the road. And they lobbed the tear gas to disperse those folks. I'm telling you, it is vastly improved since the anti-war riots that I covered back in the late 60s
so Gary, are you saying
and early 70s.
Are you saying they dispersed tear gas again?
Oh yes, this now is the third round of tear gas that has been deployed in this area within these 2 or 3 blocks or so. And here's a fellow who's been arrested being brought up now. They have arrested dozens thus far. You can see he's crying from the effects of the gas, as am I. Photographer Robert Lyons behind the camera. The police here with their tear gas masks on. Those canisters get lobbed up, and let me tell you, they are effective within a good block or so.
Gary, what was the need for the third dispersion of the tear gas? Because it appeared as if the crowd had been dispersed and everybody was
Angela,
going.
Look, do you see the situation down there? You see the guys in the middle of the road?
Yes, now I do.
You see the vehicles in the middle of the road?
Yes.
What we have here is a roving confrontation. The police move in, the road is blocked, they lob a canister of tear gas, the crowd moves back, the crowd disperses, then regroups another, in this case, 25, 30 yards down the way, and here comes the standoff again. And presumably...
we've got, Gary, sorry to break away, we've got some live pictures now from Chopper 4 of a fire that has broken out, and we're going
to get some info for you.
Yeah, can't say at this point if it's in any way related, but we have some flames, and we're going to get an exact location on this.
That's a lot of flames.
Yeah, it's a lot of fire, and that fire is completely uncontrolled right now.
Tony, you up there?
Yes, I am.
Tony, tell us what we're looking at here.
And where?
I don't know yet. We're still in route. We're coming up on it right now.
Okay.
That's near, that looks like that's near. Is that near an apartment building or industrial kind of structure? That looks like a residential.
No, it might be an apartment building. We might be looking at a house here. I'm not sure yet.
Okay, as you're approaching, just to let you know, we had another fire earlier that was unrelated to the Elián González situation. A boat was on fire, but it had nothing to do with this, and it was quickly put out.
This fire is
that's some raging
is going
stuff.
bad right now. And
it looks like a house. Look.
Yeah.
The roof?
That looks like the roof of a home. We apologize for this picture breakup right now, but
we'll get it tuned back in.
Okay, that appears to be a home. Tony, are you in contact with us? Tony?
Okay. Tone?
We're trying to get an exact location on this fire for you also.
But that appeared as if the roof of a house was on fire. As we're going to try to get that picture tuned in again.
Fully involved right now.
Fully involved. Let's go to CBS 4 Stacy Santos. She's been camped in front of the Little Havana
home in bed for the last couple of I will vouch for that.
They'll report. Not everything that's happening in this community right now is related to Elián, but there is a great deal of emotion out there, and there certainly exists the possibility that people around the community will do whatever to vent that way. So we will keep an eye around the community on what's going on. And
there is a building right next to there. You just saw someone run back into that building. I mean, that building is fairly close to the scene of the fire.
This looks like it's getting worse.
Gilda, once again, what is the location that we're looking at here? Where are we?
I am trying to get an exact location here, but it's hard to tell. We are, I would say, it's north of 836, and as traffic would be heading towards the MacArthur Causeway.
Maybe the Wynwood area, it sounds
right
like.
Now it does seem to be getting larger and spreading, and again, I see no sign of any fire rescue trucks en route yet. As we know, there have been quite a few Miami fire rescue trucks. Actually, now I see one coming up this major street, so I do see one fire truck on its way, and a lot of people standing outside. It just appears to be a very massive house fire at this point.
Okay, and again, we don't know if this is related in any way to the situation involving Elián González, but we have on the phone right now from Cuba reporter Martin Savage, and I'm sorry, he's here with us now. Martin, as people are finding out what happened in Miami this morning, what's the reaction there on the island?
Well, the news has been transmitted quite quickly, at least according to Cuban standards. Cuban radio broke into their programming at 6:30 in the morning with their first statement. They followed up about an hour later with another statement saying that the boy was safe and also urging people here to remain calm. The person giving the broadcast stated that the reason for that was that the government was concerned if there were any spontaneous demonstrations, that images of those transmitted back to the United States could have a negative impact on the legal proceedings that are still ongoing in this case. Cubans have not only heard about what's going on in Miami, now they have also been able to see the images, both of the operation that was conducted on the home and also some of the subsequent events in Miami. Cuban television now broadcasting them. That's important to note because the people here have no access, most of them, to any sort of external media source. So if they are going to see or hear about this story, it will be through the Cuban government, through the government-controlled media. The reaction of people on the street, for the most part, is that they are happy with the developments. Pleased is probably a better word. They are not jubilant. They do not smile when they talk about it. And for the most part, they say that this is just one step in a process that still has a long way to go.
Martin, we've seen those people become so much a part of these rallies and this outcry for Elián as asked to, requested, or demanded, depending on your perspective, by Fidel Castro to participate in these, at one point, daily rallies. And now they're being told, stay inside, don't make this show of force. Are they in a position where they're waiting for some sort of command? I think a lot of people here have the sense that Cuban citizens wait to be told what to do.
No, well, first of all, they have been urged not to have spontaneous demonstrations. They have been told to stay indoors. This is a normal Saturday here, and people are out and about doing their daily work. But they also, when they've had these demonstrations, they have not been saying, reunite father and son. What they have been demanding is for Elián González to be returned back to Cuba. So this really is not a point of celebration for them. They're pleased there is a reunion, but the true celebration here, the true feeling that a victory may be at hand, will be when Elián González is back on Cuban soil.
Martin, it's Michael Putney. I have to say, as one who has traveled to Cuba over the last 20 years, at least once a year, that I am familiar with Cuban media and Cuban television, and I find it a little ironic that what has gone on in Miami today, of course, is made immediately available to the people of Cuba through Cuban-owned, state-owned, and state-run media, and at the same time, the disturbances that we are experiencing, if there were disturbances in Cuba, the people of Cuba could not see them because state-owned media would not put them on.
Well, I think you state somewhat of the obvious. That's very true. It is a government-controlled media here. Clearly, what Fidel Castro, the president, has been able to do with the Elián issue is turn it into a major patriotic campaign, perhaps the largest that has been seen on this island in quite a long time. He does that with the sympathy of the international leaders who have come forward. He does that with basically a lot of sympathy from the American people, judging by the polls outside of the Miami area. So he has used this for his advantage, and he continues to do so.
Martin Savage, thank you for that update from Havana, Cuba. And we're joined on the phone now by Miami Mayor Joe Carollo. Mayor Carollo, you were out there this morning. Can you give us your take on what you saw happen? Mayor Carollo, can you hear us?
Yes.
This is Dwight Lauderdale. We saw you out there this morning in front of the home in Little Havana after the federal agents moved in. Can you give us your take on what happened, what you saw this morning?
Yes, I can. I received a call at 5:18 in the morning that part of it is still in my answer machine, where someone that was there called me at the house to inform me that federal agents had come in attacking and gassing people. I immediately told my wife to get ready. We were heading over. I called the city manager to inquire of him if our police department had been notified, and when, if they had been. Just before I was leaving, he got back to me and confirmed to me that our police chief knew about it, and he had been given orders not to say anything to me or anyone else. I told the manager I did not know of any federal laws that would prevent the police chief from speaking to the mayor of the city as to any actions that would be happening.
Mr. Mayor, had you been informed, what would you have done?
I'll get that and answer all your questions on that at another moment. What I do want to say is this, that I think that now is the time of restraint for everyone, including to show restraint, to ask the residents of the city, no matter how hurt we
Back behind the barricades!
our hearts,
Back behind the barricades!
with our heads, not with our hearts. We have to do things thinking with our heads. Well, disturbances, violence, is not going to do anything to help Elián, to help Miami, or our country. It is only going to make Fidel Castro the winner.
Mr. Mayor, it's Michael Putney. Are you satisfied with the way the Miami Police Department has been responding to the venting, the anger that we have seen in the streets of Miami in the last several hours?
Michael, this is a very trying moment for everyone, including many of the fine men and women in the police department, many that themselves were pepper gassed, because even though some in the upper ranks knew what was happening, those officers in the front lines were not informed of it. And when I arrived to the González home early this morning, sometime around 5:40 or 5:45 or so. I saw officers there that were still having their eyes stinging. I went to the González home to see a family that was totally destroyed, to see a home that had been just turned upside down. You know, Michael, as an American, I am ashamed of what our federal government did today. There was no reason to have done this.
Well, the Attorney General, Mr. Mayor, the Attorney General said that she had negotiated in good faith and they just reached a dead end. And
I will tell you, as mayor of this city, and they can come get me if they want, like they did with Elián, that the Attorney General has lied to the American public.
How has she lied, sir?
American public. And let me start from her latest lie. When she went on national television to say, over 3 hours after the incident happened, when she had been informed minute by minute of what had happened, that she didn't even know at that time if there were weapons or not in the house. The attorney knew darn well that there were no weapons in that house, and particularly over 3 hours later, when federal agents went in that house. I mean, who in the right mind can believe that the chief law enforcement officer of this country, that is being briefed minute by minute the situation that is happening there, that over 3 hours later, they're not going to know if there were any weapons in the house or not.
Mr. Mayor, I have to interrupt you. This is Dwight Lauderdale. Thank you for your vantage point. We'll be getting back to you, but right now we're looking at some live pictures where some of your officers, Miami police officers, are now moving in on a crowd, and we see they're firing some tear gas.
This is at the corner, it appears to be the corner of 27th Avenue and Flagler Street. Our Peter Dinch is there. Peter, can you hear us?
I can hear you, absolutely. Let me talk quick before this tear gas hits us. This is the fourth time they fired tear gas at the crowd, warning them to get back. In all fairness, they have warned us that this is going to happen. The quickest way to disperse them, we have a series of confrontations that seem to wander from one block to the next. The Miami police out here in full force and riot gear, giving plenty of notice that the tear gas is being fired. The only way to try it, clear the street of the people out here. Now, this tear gas, of course, takes a while to water towards us going downwind, but as a result, the streets are momentarily clear because of the tear gas they fired on the crowd. Again, this is the fourth time they've done this in the past hour or so. All this started because of the fires out here.
Okay, Peter, try to get some water so that the tear gas doesn't take your voice out. Mr. Mayor, are you watching these pictures right now on Channel 10? Is Mayor Joe Carollo still with us?
All right, let's try to hook back up with him so he can sort of talk us through what kind of operation these field forces are requested to do, what their position is, and maybe clear up some of what they're doing, their activity. Let's go back to the house right now, the González family home at 23rd and 2nd Street Northwest, where that crowd remains planted in front of the home. You saw Lázaro and Maris Lacy's apparently leaving the home just a little while ago. They do have a flight to catch at 1:20 on to Washington, although we don't know the details of their mission to Washington. We don't know what they'll be able to do.
Originally we were told they were going to go up and demand a meeting with, at least between Maris Lacy's and Elián, to assure that he is in good physical health. But Michael, as you've pointed out, I don't think at this point they can really demand much of anything from the Justice Department, particularly in Washington.
Exactly. I don't really think they have much leverage. While we are looking at these pictures live from the González home, let me say that we have received a statement from the Catholic Archdiocese of Miami from Archbishop John Favalora, and it says, quote, "At this time I call upon all citizens of the Miami community to exercise restraint and calm." The Archbishop says, as the community is observing solemn holy days, it would be appropriate to take today's events to prayer for healing and reconciliation. He says our city has faced crisis in the past with reasoned reaction. It is time once again to call forth our best efforts for the good of everyone in the area. I call upon all of the Catholic churches to pray for the entire González family and for a peaceful period of healing and reconciliation. That statement from John Favalora, the Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Miami.
As we look at these live pictures outside the González home, are we able to get Peter Dinch back at that location along Northwest 27th Avenue?
Well, if we can't get Peter, who is suffering from inhaling pepper spray and tear gas, along with Al Rodriguez, his great photojournalist, let's go back to Mark Joella. Mark, if you can hear me, we see a lot of people milling around the house. Are they doing anything? What's going on there?
Well, Michael, it has certainly quieted down here in the short 10 or 15 minutes since the family emerged and left, presumably for the Miami airport. This is really a small crowd. It may seem larger in the picture you're looking at because they are gathered all around the front of the Gonzalez family home. But this is a small crowd that has been relatively quiet and peaceful for the better part of the morning, and they I believe they're just continuing to stay here out of shock and not really knowing what else to do. As we now move into the afternoon, they have at times flared up with anger, at one point directed at Miami police officers, at another point directed at members of the media, saying that they're not telling the whole story, and that may be venting that we have seen before. Most of the real conflict seems to be happening outside this neighborhood in the pictures that you're looking at live right now.
Right, and Mark, as one who has spent many hours there at that site, I know that some members of the crowd have occasionally buttonholed me and have told me the air of the reporting that we have done and of all the media. Has anybody come up to you today and said, I hope you tell this story right and what the agents did? Have you been lectured?
Yes, Michael. In fact, you can kind of see the emotions evolve throughout the morning. Early this morning, shortly after the raid on the Gonzalez family home, almost everyone in the crowd wanted to talk to any reporter who would walk up to them, as if the world did not know what had happened, and they all wanted to tell their story of what they had seen. They all were very shocked. They were hurt and angry, and many people just in tears over what they had witnessed. As the day has worn on, there has been a little bit more anger in the crowd. People at times chanting, having seen pictures like you're looking at right now. That image even made into posters that were distributed throughout the crowd earlier today with various slogans criticizing the government for their action here at the House.
Right. And I don't want to put a political cast on what has gone on here, but I want to say that Al Gore's chances in the state of Florida, I think, have diminished considerably. Not that he was going to get a huge amount of Cuban American votes, but I think that he will bear the brunt. We are going to see that image over and over and over again, and part of it will be in the presidential campaign.
Michael, actually, we have a statement from Al Gore. He's in Nashville, and it says, quote, "As I have said, I believe this issue should have been handled through a family court and with the family coming together. I commend the people of Miami who in the first difficult hours acted in a calm and lawful way, and I ask all Americans, no matter what their position on this issue, to obey the rule of law," end quote. The response from presidential candidate Al Gore.
Yeah, I would also point out, I interviewed Al Gore about 3 months ago at Century Village in Pembroke Pines, and at that point, Al Gore, when I asked him about the Elián case, said he thought that it should be decided in the family court. So people who have said he's been pandering, changed his point of view, 3 months or so ago, he was saying family court is where it belonged. Anyway, that's for another day, another issue. While we're looking at these live pictures, I want to go back to some sounds and interview with Miami Police Chief Bill O'Brien. We had to cut it short earlier, but his police department is now the principal agency responsible for keeping the peace. Here is what Chief O'Brien had to say earlier today.
From a police tactical standpoint, that at this point this is a law enforcement effort, and that would have compromised the security of the officers involved.
Were you in contact with the Justice Department as this was happening?
I was.
Were you, in fact, in one of the vans? There had been some rumors and some officers had been calling our news desk saying that you also accompanied. Is that true?
No, I was arriving at the police station at that time to make sure our EOC got opened.
Okay. You had said from a police standpoint it wasn't necessary to notify the mayors. They might argue, and they have already gone on television, that from a political standpoint they needed to know. What do you say to that?
I'm a policeman, not a politician.
Thank you very much.
Miami Police Chief Bill O'Brien, and he is quite right. He is a police officer and not a politician. He's a very good police officer. And there we are looking at a field force of his officers. And Glenna, I'm not quite sure on the location. Can we get the location here?
Michael, if you can hear me,
Yes,
this
Peter.
is Peter Dench live here. That location is a couple of blocks just west of 27th Avenue on a very, very volatile Flagler Street. Roving confrontations going up and down across the street. We were knocked out by commission. Sergeant has asked me to stand back by tear gas being fired. But right now, the lines are drawn. That police line that you're looking at right now, as we're drawing back some, is right across the street from the Dade County Auditorium. Again, the tear gas being fired 4 times at demonstrators coming at police, blocking the street. And by now, we've seen at least about 35 people arrested so far, all of them in this demonstration trying to block the thoroughfare.
Well, Peter, if I understand this correctly, it would appear that the police are pushing, as it were, the demonstrators west on Flagler Street. Is that sort of the direction it's going?
Right. The steady march has been west on Flagler Street, and then they retreat and draw back. They've had on their gas masks now for the better part of the past hour and a half, and firing this tear gas into the crowd. It takes about 10 or 15 seconds to come back and hit us and knock us out of commission here.
And Peter, where are most of the demonstrators? We saw, you estimated in the vicinity of 300 people at one point at the intersection, and now they've dispersed. Where have they gone?
Well, they have totally dispersed and gone west, some heading north and south with actually no purpose or direction that we know of, with no sense that they're heading to the home of Elián's family near here. Many of them running, but some of them come back, and when they come back, it's sort of a frontline taunting of the police, because they come back wearing handkerchiefs, masks across their face, and then in a slow movement they approach the police, sort of daring them to fire that tear gas at them. But most of the core of the demonstrators have left this area. Many of those are younger people taunting the Miami police, who have ordered them to back off and don't want to fire it, but fire when they feel they have to.
Right. Now, Peter, I don't think you have a monitor there, but we are now showing pictures from Sky 10. And Gilda Unruh, you are in Sky 10. Whereabouts are you, and where are these pictures?
Michael, we can tell you that right now this is Red Road and Flagler.
All right,
Road
so that's
and
57th.
West Flagler Street.
Yeah, 57th
big
and Flagler.
Crowd gathering at this intersection. I am not able to see any sign of any kind of police force at this point. Cars seem to have stopped in the intersection. As you can see, that man has crawled on top of his vehicle, and people are gathering and waving flags, and it appears to be another intersection where, again, folks have come together to protest and demonstrate, and again, you can see they have pretty much taken over the entire intersection.
Gilda, it appears that the protesters are taking their call west. They're moving slowly west down Flagler Street. From your vantage point, can you see any police activity that would form some sort of boundary, or are they allowing these people to continue traveling so long as they remain nonviolent?
Glenna, from our perspective, we see absolutely no police presence in this area at all, and you're right, it does appear that they are moving west, but right now there is no police presence that would appear to indicate that they are trying to deter this.
And how's it impacting traffic, Gilda?
From what I can see, traffic has stopped in pretty much all directions. As we pan down one of the streets here, everything has just come to a grinding halt. Now, I do see a police car there in the video, but he appears to be pretty much the lone officer at this scene.
Yeah, I don't think these two officers standing off to the side of their police car are going to go into that intersection by themselves. I suspect they are calling for backup. Well, it looks fairly dramatic, and we also see a camera, a TV news crew is in the middle of the intersection, and I have to say that Eyewitness News is certainly trying to be as responsible as we can be. We understand that when cameras appear, people also appear. Now, we momentarily we had a shot.
Airport. Can we go back to that shot? Can we go back to Miami International Airport?
Yeah, we were looking at
Because we understand right now, yes, that only ticketed passengers are being allowed into the area of Miami International Airport, and traffic is congested, but we're told that the access to the airport is still open and moving, but and only ticketed passengers are being allowed into the airport area.
To me, that looks like Miami International on almost any other day. I mean, it's a Saturday. It doesn't look any more or less busy, at least in my experience. We don't know where the Gonzalez family is, but if they're going to get on a flight, what time was that flight?
It's at 1:25. We have information that they have just arrived. What you're looking at here is right out in front of the American Airlines concourse. You see off to the left, and the family has arrived, gone inside. They'll be checking in for their American Airlines flight to D.C., which should leave a little over half an hour.
And there in the lower left-hand side of your screen, you were looking at the site of demonstrators. That's a view from Sky 10 at 57th Avenue and Flagler Street. And more people are gathering. They are peaceful. They're not burning anything. They are simply waving flags and making their displeasure known with what has happened earlier this morning with Elián being taken out of Lazaro's home. On the other hand, police, and we see children there as well with their parents. It's peaceful, but again, it's against the law. You cannot stand out there and block intersections. Yes. And I think that the police at some point are going to form up, and they're going to come out there and they're going to open up the intersection.
Well, Michael, they have to, because if you have an emergency in that area and you need to get to a hospital and the intersection is blocked, it becomes a problem. And that's why the police units, field force units, will at some point reach this intersection, and just as we've seen over the hours, they'll clear it out and force the protesters to move.
Just a few minutes ago, Lázaro González and his family arrived at the airport. We want to show you pictures of that moment when they got there. You saw them leaving their house just a little while ago. They live fairly close to the airport. They arrived for a flight to Washington. This was a decision made not long ago to go and take up their fight there, where Elián is now. This SUV, this black SUV, is apparently the vehicle they were traveling in. Difficult shot to see. It appears that the people at the airport, coming and going, stopped to look at what all the commotion was about. It does not look like anybody, any of the protesters or their supporters followed them to the airport. So this is probably as alone as his family has been in months. They are on their way to Washington, D.C. What they will do there, what they are going to be able to do there, is still very much a question.
And this again is the live shot on, is this the intersection of Red Road, I believe?
And I am told that Miami-Dade Mayor Alex Pinellas is on the phone line. Mr. Mayor, are you there?
Michael, yes, how are you?
Well, we are doing pretty well, thank you. And yet we are watching some pictures, and I don't know if you have access to Channel 10 right now, but we are showing some pictures. This is not strictly speaking in your jurisdiction. I mean, this is within the city of Miami. But at 57th and Flagler, we are looking at least a couple of dozen people who are peacefully, but nonetheless blocking that intersection. Once again, Mr. Mayor, what do you say to people who are sincerely frustrated and angry over what has happened, but have taken to the streets?
Well, what I would tell them is that this behavior simply cannot be permitted. Obviously, the police will decide when it will be the appropriate time to regroup and to ask those individuals to move off onto the sidewalk, which would be, of course, a legal form of protest. Blocking the streets, as we're watching right now on Channel 10, is not appropriate behavior. And obviously, as I've been done primarily on our Spanish language channels, ask people to refrain from this kind of behavior. There is a right way to protest, and there is a wrong way to protest. And an individual's right to protest ends when someone else's rights begins. And I think that's what's important. Obviously, as you well said, Michael, people feel very strongly about this issue, but I think today we have seen, perhaps not right now on 57th Avenue, but I think we have seen very quick responses by law enforcement agencies.
We have indeed, Mr. Mayor, and I wanted to ask you, I can only assume that the Miami-Dade police force, which is approximately 4 to 5 times larger than the city of Miami, that the Miami-Dade force is in reserve. Is that right? What is the status of your police force?
Miami-Dade Police does several things. They will back up the city of Miami or any other municipality for that matter when necessary. But also, I'm not sure if you've got cameras out on the Palmetto and Flagler Street. There is a large group congregated there on Flagler Street where Miami-Dade Police has taken primary control of that situation. So the police is also monitoring potential issues at the seaport and the airport, primarily at the airport. So obviously Miami-Dade Police, as I've said on many occasions, will enforce the law. We will assure ourselves that while people should be given the right to protest, they must do so peacefully. Behavior that in any way disrupts traffic or disrupts the community will not be tolerated.
Mr. Mayor, this is Dwight Lauderdale. What would you recommend that people do? Are there any plans perhaps for some kind of organized protest to give people a chance to vent their feelings yet not disrupt traffic and disrupt the everyday life of the rest of the community?
Dwight, absolutely. And as you may know, I met for well over an hour this morning with Cuban exile group leaders in the Coral Way area this morning, and plans will be announced soon for peaceful protests. Those plans have not been finalized, but the group did leave the meeting this morning with a total and complete consensus on the fact that despite our indignation, despite the fact that people have very strong feelings about what happened today, that violence will not be tolerated, that rock throwing or bottle throwing will not be tolerated. Behavior such as what we're watching now cannot be tolerated. That group is calling for calm, and that's very important in these very tense moments.
Mayor Pinellas, could that planned rally take place as early as tomorrow, or when do you think it might happen?
I think you'll see two things. I think there'll be a large rally or demonstration of some sort taking place quickly. It could be religious in nature, perhaps as early as tomorrow. As you all know, tomorrow is an important religious day. And many people will I think welcome an opportunity to express their emotions in a prayerful fashion. That is being considered. There are other options that are being considered, but they are peaceful options, and that's what's important. A lot of the things you're seeing now is not activity that any of these organizations condone, Michael. I think it's important that we mention that. These are instances and several spots around the county that no organization is condoned, that no organization is calling for, that no elected official is calling for. These are spontaneous expressions, manifestations of emotions in ways that no individual or organization can in any way control.
Mr. Mayor, do you have any plans perhaps to go out to some of these sites and personally ask people to go home?
Well, I've been doing some of that this morning. As you know, I was at the home this morning and spent a considerable amount of time there from the home, especially speaking to Spanish language TV and radio stations, asking people to be calm. If it is necessary for me to go out into any of these areas to ask people for calm, I will certainly do that. I think that is something that I will consider if it's appropriate at any time during the course of today or any other day.
Mayor Pinellas, as you know, I'm sure Lázaro González, Marisolices González, maybe Delphine, are about ready to board a plane to fly to Washington to try to see Elián and perhaps to still effect some kind of a reconciliation. Would you be willing to call Janet Reno or even the president, and you certainly have a good relationship with Vice President Gore, to ask their help to continue to try to break this impasse and let the family solve this?
Absolutely, Michael, and as you well know, I mean, I'm very much willing to do that now after the unfortunate incident this morning, but I've been doing that for several weeks, asking the Justice Department, the Vice President, the Attorney General, anyone who would listen to me to exhaust any and all options before they did what they did this morning. And I think it's shameful that so much progress had taken place during the course of the last maybe 20 hours since mediators got involved early yesterday morning, so much progress had taken place. The family had signed an agreement that showed considerable movement on their part.
But Mr. Pinellas, the first paragraph of that agreement says that they wanted to meet in Dade County, and clearly the other side wanted to meet someplace else. So where's the movement? That's been the case for weeks now.
Dwight, I understand. I wasn't privy to those negotiations, but my understanding.
But where's the movement you're talking about? The very first thing, there's a roadblock.
The mere fact that the families were willing to meet and have the boy there, I think, was significant movement. The logistics, Dwight, of where the meeting would take place, at what time, and all that could have been worked out later. I think there was a very real willingness on the part of the family to make concessions, and they were negotiating. They were negotiating to the point of this raid early this morning. I just would have hoped, and again, I wasn't the one handling the situation, but I would have hoped, and is what I asked the Attorney General in the last phone conversation that I had with her Thursday, that all of those options be exhausted before we saw what we saw this morning.
Well, you know, Mr. Mayor, Janet Reno, I think a fair-minded person would say, has bent over backwards to try to find some way to solve this. I mean, even putting her own personal reputation on the line and coming to Miami, where another Attorney General perhaps would not have done such. Do you think that, I mean, we're seeing signs all over the place today at the House, in other words, and other places, criticizing Janet Reno, and indeed you've criticized Janet Reno. Do you think that she just didn't have enough patience here?
I think she should have gone the extra mile. I think she should have waited until the last possible moment to do this.
When was that?
I don't know, Dwight and Michael. I don't know when the last moment was.
She determined it was at 5:10 this morning.
Well, but the negotiations began in earnest yesterday morning.
Oh, so
you're talking
before this, Mr. Mayor, make yourself clear now. Before this, what you're saying then, the two sides were just doing what? What have they been doing for weeks now if the negotiations just began in earnest?
Dwight, I was not privy to the negotiations. Okay, I don't know. I know that the mediators got involved early yesterday morning. They began strong negotiations, and there was movement on both sides. I would have hoped, this is all I'm saying, I would have hoped to have seen all of these options exhausted before what happened today. And we've seen the images, I don't think, in the pictures. I mean, it's not anything that I'm saying. We saw the images on television of the boy, the terror in his face, the weapon aimed towards him. I mean, I personally don't, this was a peaceful home. All they were providing this young boy was with love and with care. I don't think that was necessary during a religious weekend. I don't think that was necessary. Nonetheless, and here we're seeing the picture right now, I mean, I don't think that was called for, with all due respect. Look at the terror on the boy's face. I mean, I don't think that was necessary.
Mayor, in hindsight, you've come out so publicly in support of the family, and in hindsight, do you think there was anything you could have done as mayor of the county to make it so they could have done this take of Elián less dramatically, more peacefully?
Well, I concentrated tremendously, of course, from the perspective of the Justice Department of making sure that they were exhausting all of their options. From the public order perspective, I think we've seen, unfortunately, until today, after today's incident, that this community has behaved very appropriately. 2 weeks ago, as you recall, there was a planned slowdown of Miami International Airport, which was averted. In lieu thereof, there was a peaceful prayer vigil on 22nd Avenue. Those were the kind of activities that I was trying to bring about to make sure that whatever forums were utilized to express people's emotions, that it be done peacefully. And it worked, unfortunately, until today when we see some of these images and the way that folks responded to the federal officials' raid of the home.
However, it was common knowledge that the people would be trying to form a human chain around the home, doing everything they physically possibly could to prevent any agent from quietly walking up to the door and knocking on the door and having them enter bring Elián over.
Right, as were efforts being made through the mediators today and yesterday to work with Lázaro in a scenario where Lázaro and the boy and Mari's Laces would meet with the boy's father.
But they, again, Mr. Mayor, insisted on that meeting take place here, and the other side didn't want it to take place here. As long as they could never agree on where to meet, whatever led you to believe there was going to be a meeting?
I'm of the impression that the family would have agreed to a site outside Miami-Dade County. I think they're...
At what point, sir? This has been going on for weeks.
Dwight, I don't know, Dwight. I was not part of the negotiation.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, one last question. When, to your knowledge, did Aaron Podhurst, Ted Foote, Carlos de la Cruz, Carlos Rodriguez, and there was another gentleman involved as well, when did these really influential community business leaders get involved in the negotiations?
My understanding is that they got involved either late Thursday or early Friday morning. That is my understanding.
And do you know if Aaron Podhurst, in fact, is in Washington and was speaking directly to the Attorney General?
No, I do not know that. I know only of statements that Tad Foote has made. I think you've already run those statements. He's expressed his personal indignation at the way this issue went. I think those are questions that President Foote, that Mr. Podhurst can answer. These are respected community leaders who were involved, and that is questions you should ask of them. In the meantime, I just want to make sure that people understand that the kind of behavior that we're watching right now is behavior we cannot condone. I would expect the City of Miami Police, shortly after they've regrouped at this particular corner, to clear the street and allow traffic to continue in its normal course. That's our main concern right now. People need to be calm. I know they feel very strongly about this, but we cannot allow the rest of the world to see these images that they're seeing right now.
Mayor Alex Pinellas, thank you for taking the time. We know this has been a very trying experience for you, for taking the time to talk to our viewers, and we're going to stay in touch with your office as this community moves forward.
Thank you very much, Dwight.
Right now, let's go to Eyewitness News reporter Matt Lorch, who is at this location, Lejeune Road and West Flagler Street. Matt?
Let's go ahead and give you a look of what's going on. Over my shoulder, you can see another intersection, another dumpster fire. Protesters have pulled this dumpster into the street and have now lit its contents on fire. And if Chris can pan over to the left, you can see there is a newspaper dispenser, a garbage can, there is a seat, a bench that protesters have pulled out into the street. And further on, right in the middle of the intersection, you can see that there are cars that have completely locked this intersection. You just heard the mayor of Miami-Dade County talking about the frustration that we are all feeling when we see these images on television. I was asking some of these protesters, why not just peacefully protest? Why not stand on the sidewalk and chant your chants and say what needs to be said on the sidewalk without blocking traffic? And they say because of their frustration from the images that they saw on television early this morning. The image, they say, of little 6-year-old Elián with a gun pointed to his head, as they see it, by an INS officer. So that's why they're taking to the streets and acting out in the manner that they are. They say that their frustration is built up so much that they feel their voice needs to be heard, and this is the best way to act that out. And as you can see in front of me, that BFI dumpster is really catching fire.
Any sign of Miami police officers moving toward this location, Matt?
Not that we've seen. We've been here for about a half hour now, and as we moved around throughout the morning, protesters will block an intersection, and then in time, police will show up and clear the intersection, make arrests if necessary, and the protesters move on. And it appears that for now, no police have either known that the protesters were at this intersection and have taken it over.
Of course, the danger in this situation is people sitting in traffic who might become frustrated.
Trying to control crowds elsewhere. Actually, now we're hearing some sirens, and it looks like police are moving in, so we'll be able to see what happens here as they move in. You can see that there is a group right in front of me, just beyond that dumpster, that has joined hands. They're holding up Cuban flags. Someone is holding the United States flag as well. And now we'll watch as police step from their patrol cars and try to regain order in this intersection at Lejeune and Flagler.
Well, let's stay with the live picture if we can. And Matt, I know it's very loud there. You probably can't hear us back in the studio, but I've got to say, as we hear these horns blaring, that this really does not do the cause any good of those who are terribly upset with what has happened this morning. If they believe that, in fact, the U.S. government was wrong, they are committing a wrong also. And really what we are seeing here, while no lives have been endangered, this is vandalism. There is no other way to describe it.
And just as, Michael, we talked about some of the history of this community, we went through several civil disturbances in black communities during the 80s, and we would see this this same kind of behavior, starting fires in your own community. And I have the same question that I asked back then to ask now. What do you accomplish by setting a fire or trashing your own community? There are people watching this throughout South Florida who don't have to go to that area, who don't have to go to the stores, to the banks in that area. But some of the folks who are living around here and who are perhaps engaging in this kind of behavior on Monday morning will have to do business in that area. What's I've never understood the logic behind trashing your own community.
Well, I think
Not
you're
that trash,
exactly
you should go
right.
trash someone else's community, but
I don't think logic
I don't
is
get
involved. I don't think they are thinking at all. I think they're working off raw emotion. They're not considering the consequences right now. They just want to vent.
I'm sorry, one of our producers said something in my ear and I didn't understand. What? Oh, well, let's go back to Sky 10, yes, and let's hear Gilda Unruh has a really unobstructed view of this location. Gilda, what's it look like from your vantage point?
Right. Well, Michael, they have definitely set a dumpster on fire here at this location. A lot of demonstrators are gathering. There's not a lot of police presence at this point in time, but the trash has been scattered all over the streets. You're looking at a sign there, West Flagler, and I believe our cross street is Lejeune, 7th Street, excuse me, 7th Street. Traffic has come to a standstill. As you can see now, they are continuing to put stuff into the dumpster to enlarge the fire. This started just a few minutes ago, and crowds have gathered. They've completely blocked off that intersection. This is really the only sign of any kind of violence that we're seeing at this point in time. But again, police have not yet mobilized and come into this area as yet. Michael?
Well, I'm sure they will be mobilizing, and indeed, well, we just saw Matt Lorch.
Matt's going to fill us in on that.
There were a couple police cars that were here, and then they were outmatched, so they left. But as we look down Lejeune Road, we are now looking south, just beyond Flagler. There's a large group of police officers that you could clearly see are wearing riot gear, and now they are moving in this direction. And as you can see, this is what's been going on all morning. The crowd is now starting to disperse. So it seems like they moved to one intersection, create a few problems, commit some vandalism, wait for police to show up, and then move on.
You know, I have to observe once again that it is kind of a sad irony that the agency that is enforcing the law and trying to keep the peace here is the City of Miami Police Department, which is overwhelmingly, or at least predominantly, made up of Cuban American officers. They are enforcing the law, and I don't know how they feel personally, except I suspect if you took a private poll, you would find most of them believe that Elián should not go back to Cuba, at least. I'm sure they would believe that. And again, the City of Miami Police Department is not the agency that moved in there and took the child out of the house. They are simply the authority figures who are having to cope with these hit-and-run attacks.
You're mentioning a poll, worth mentioning here that a poll in the past few weeks indicates that the vast majority of people, excluding the Cuban American population of Miami and Dade County, favored seeing Elián reunited with his father, and many of those are the people who have been put out by acts of civil disturbance. And we have heard in our newsroom that there is a resentment, people saying, you know, it's not our fault this is happening, and why are we the ones paying for what's going on?
Right. I think the poll you're referring to was a fascinating Miami Herald poll of about 2 Sundays ago as we watch the Miami Police Department form up, and this they are ready to about ready to move in and reclaim this intersection. The Miami Herald poll obviously underscored what we have known, and that is that Elián and the whole episode here has polarized this community almost like nothing else. In that poll, 92% of African Americans said the child should be returned to his father. 70% of Anglos said he should be returned to his father, and 90% of Cuban Americans said he should stay here with the relatives. I mean, how much more deeply divided could the community be on any given issue? I can't recall any issue.
As we watch this field force move toward the crowd, hoping to take back this intersection. You're looking at Lejeune Road, West Flagler Street, where protesters have set a trash fire essentially inside this dumpster, and now just moments ago they were there. Obviously they have retreated at this point, but the police are moving in now, taking back the area, freeing up the traffic. Again, the danger in a situation like this is if you're a pregnant woman and you're on your way to the hospital and you run into one of these demonstrations, that's a problem?
This is Flagler Street and Red Road, the intersection that Sky 10 is now over, where there is some sort of gathering. Somebody is making a comment. This is one of the intersections where people are gathering. And do we have a reporter there ready to tell us what's going on?
Gilda Unruh was in Sky 10. Gilda?
Yes, this was the intersection we were over with earlier, guys, and what we can see is just more people gathering at this intersection of Flagler and Red Road. It is hard to tell exactly if there is anyone addressing the crowd, who it is, unless we can zoom in a little further. But again, this is another one of those spontaneous gatherings that we're seeing almost up and down 7th Street quite a bit. And people are just protesting, waving flags. Nothing violent as of yet, and no sign of police presence as of yet as well, Dwight.
But Gilda, they have closed down the intersection, right?
Oh, very definitely. I mean, the traffic is not going anywhere, as you can see, in any direction. They've got cars in the middle of the street, people in the middle of the street. Nobody that's on that road or that intersection is going anywhere right now.
Well, obviously, anybody who wants to go east or west on Flagler Street, which is a main east-west thoroughfare in the city of Miami and Miami-Dade County, should avoid it, because you are simply not going to be able to move through that area, or at least move easily. And there's something
that is the focal point.
Something that's exciting this crowd here.
Yeah.
And now it appears to be moving.
You can see they're now starting to chant. Obviously, from our vantage point, we don't know what they're saying, but they are beginning to sort of gather and chant and move in one direction.
Yeah, well, once again, part of what's going on there is a television camera, and where there are cameras, often there are people who are attracted, who say and do things which sometimes are not always rational.
Seems like the one gentleman there is
and somebody is,
the crowd.
Yes, a gentleman is exhorting the crowd, and there is a reporter there. I have to also remark, just a few minutes ago, I saw video of a really well-known and a friend of mine, a fellow named Al DeRuthi, who is a former Channel 10 photographer, a really great photojournalist, at the intersection where Peter Dench was, and Al DeRuthi had been arrested and was being led away. So obviously the police, if they believe that the media who are on the scene are somehow obstructing justice or interfering with police officers, not obeying lawful orders, media people are being arrested as well.
In just 10 minutes from now, the flight, American Airlines flight to Washington that Lázaro and Marislaisis González are on, is set to take off. If we can, let's go to Miami International Airport. Kelly Cobiella is standing by. Kelly.
Glenna, it was about 40 minutes ago now when Marislaisis, as well as some of the other Miami relatives, actually arrived at the airport. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the video that we did shoot inside the airport. We happen to have a crew inside because that crew is headed to Washington, D.C., obviously to continue to cover this story. However, in the afternoon, once again, about 40 minutes ago, we were told to get back from the airport, get back from the terminal, the media as a whole, by the Miami-Dade police. We were told to stay on the other side of a barricade and shoot from there. A black pickup truck showed up with the relatives inside, showed up at Concourse C, quite a distance away. We did see Marislaisis get out, as well as some of the other family members. Obviously, they are on this trip to go to Washington, D.C. At this point, we don't know exactly what their purpose is. In other words, we did not hear it from them. They did not make any statement inside, nor were we able to get any statement outside the airport. But they did arrive about 40 minutes ago. There were some crowds outside watching, waiting, obviously drawn to the TV cameras, asking what was happening. They quickly made their way inside. Again, did not speak to any media and boarded the plane. And that's the latest from MIA. I'm Kelly Cobiella.
Kelly, thank you very much. Interesting to note that, and now we are looking at some really dramatic live pictures.
I think that's the same spot at Flagler.
Oh, that is, yes, the smoke then is from that dumpster that is.
I think Matt Lorch is at that location. Matt, have they extinguished the fire? Is that what we're looking at?
Firefighters just showed up on the scene. They put out the fire in this dumpster minutes ago. Police just came and reclaimed this intersection, and the crowd headed west on West Flagler Road. But for now, at least, it looks like this fire has been put out, and now they'll wait for the next one.
Matt, is it your sense that this is just a stop and go for these groups of protesters? They come in, they do something that many would consider to be vandalism, and then disperse and go someplace else?
Glenna, that's exactly what's going on. And really early on in the morning, police had arrested most of the troublemakers. There were some young troublemakers that had covered their faces with their shirts or with bandanas so that they could commit acts of violence or vandalism, seemingly. They were throwing rocks at police officers. They were taunting police officers. Police immediately came in and arrested a lot of those people, and then the protests turned peaceful throughout much of the morning hours. Now it just seems like the masses are turning out, and for the most part, the police are outnumbered, and by the time they arrive at an intersection, the crowd has already moved on to another intersection and is causing more problems there.
But Matt, are they making any arrests at all, or are they just clearing the intersection?
Vandalizing their own community, they say they are so outraged and they don't know how to act out.
You know, can I make the observation that there seems to be two different types of protests going on? I'm not sure that we could call these so-called vandals part of the larger, more peaceful demonstration, this emoting of a community, because here you see at this particular street corner, it is very peaceful. However loud and emotional, it's a very peaceful thing, and there seems to be hot spots where, if I may, troublemakers just come to add those 2 cents. So I'm not sure that we can call these dumpster fires.
You just can't characterize all demonstrators, because there are different kinds of demonstrators. And also, I think it's also fair to point out that Castro has agents here, and one of the things they do is try to make the Cuban exile community look bad by fomenting problems. And I think that I would not be surprised to know that some of the vandalism that we have seen is really the work of Castro agents. We can't prove that, but I think that it is something that we need to say.
Well, let's go back to the house, the Gonzalez home in Little Havana, where Eyewitness News reporter Mark Joyella has just learned some new information. Mark?
Yes, Dwight, let me pick up on something that Michael just reported, which is the belief among many of the protesters in the Cuban exile community that Castro agents may be among them and may in fact be behind some of the more confrontational protests that we're seeing on the streets of South Florida. This is exactly the message that was delivered to the crowd of people outside the Gonzalez family home this morning. One of the speakers standing up, grabbing the bullhorn and saying, in fact, "We know you are out there. We ask you to leave." At the home, it has been very peaceful all through the day. There have been a few moments when tempers did flare, but for the most part, this has been a very peaceful gathering, and the family, at least their representatives, have tried to draw the contrast between what is happening here and what we are seeing on Flagler Street and other areas, saying that, this is not what we are looking for today. The members of the family asking that everyone be peaceful and protest in a way that does not disrupt and certainly does not allow pictures to be broadcast around the world. And to the exile community, of course, those pictures, they don't want them seen in Cuba, because they believe that that is something that Fidel Castro will only be able to use to his advantage.
Mark, I don't know if from your vantage point there at the house you could see exactly who was in the family party that left and now is at Miami International and should be now on a plane that will depart momentarily. But in the video that we were able to shoot out at MIA, I saw Lazaro and Maris Laces, Delphine and Georgina Sid, who is her cousin, who has also traveled with her before to Washington. Maybe somebody else. So I take it there are in the vicinity of 4 or 5 family members who are going to D.C. Is that sort of jibe with the count that you had?
That's right, Michael. From looking from my vantage point and then looking at the same pictures you saw from MIA, it appeared to me that this was Lazaro, Delphine, Maris Laces Gonzalez, and then, as you mentioned, Georgina Sid, the cousin, and perhaps others who were along with the group when previously they have made trips. They have often had other folks go along with them, but as far as the family members, it seemed to be that small group.
Mark, I need to interrupt for a moment because we are now looking at the first picture of Juan Miguel Gonzalez, Elián, his stepbrother, and his stepmother.
Can we get clarification when this photograph was taken?
Yeah, this it would be interesting to know, but I mean, look at the look on Elián's face. Contrast that with the look on his face as he cowered in the closet at Lazaro's home, being held by Donato Dalrymple. I think that it's a much happier picture, and here is Elián with his half-brother, who is 6.5 months old, whom he had asked about on the phone when he spoke with his father the other day. We don't know where these photos were taken or when, but it must have been in the last hour or two.
And on the surface shows you the resiliency of a 6-year-old. Hours ago, this little boy was scared. I mean, you could see the fear on his face, and now he looks pretty happy there.
We're just being told these pictures were, in fact, taken today, and remember that he is seeing his father, no matter what people here have said, good or bad, about his father. Elián grew up with him. He knows him. He loves him, and seeing his father for the first time, you know, it looks to be the bond is there. You could see it in their faces.
Yeah, this does not look like a boy under duress at this moment, but once again, we have no access. We really don't have any independent verification. What we do have are the 2 photographs we have just shown you. There's the other one, Juan Miguel on the right, looking a little bit more relieved than we have seen him look in a long time, and Elián with a big smile on his face with his papa, as he calls him.
And we wish we could tell you exactly where they are right now, but the immigration commissioner has made it a point that they will not stay in the home that Juan Miguel and his wife have been staying in Bethesda, Maryland, but will be kept at some other location. So again, they're taking steps to make sure that he isn't on Cuban soil as the other residences.
Yes, there's been a lot of talk of the transition that needs to be made to reacquaint Elián with his father, and because he has bonded so well with Maris Lacis and her family, what must this be like for him to all of a sudden be handed to a man that he hasn't seen in 4 months? However, I've been reading some very interesting comments from child psychologists who work with cases of parental kidnap, where one parent will take a child away to perhaps another country for years. When they are reunified with their original parent after a much longer period of time, these psychologists say that the bond is instant, there is no transition needed, that the recognition levels, the attachment levels are there, which is a very interesting concept because the family here is so worried about Elián being sort of shuffled between people that he hasn't seen.
And there might be some people who are looking at these photographs right now and saying, well, he's being forced to look that way. Now, look at that face. That smile is real.
Yeah,
that's not a strained smile or a concerned look or anything. That's real joy. And isn't he meeting his stepbrother for the first time?
Yes, he has not. I don't think he has seen Yanni, I believe, is the child's name. Yeah. You know, Dr. Alan Delamater, who is a child psychologist at the University of Miami Medical School, who I have interviewed a number of times over the last 4 months, has made the point that children of this age are extremely resilient. And he has also made the point, which you just made, Glenna, which is he has spent the first 5.5 years of his life with his father, and the last 4 months with loving family members, but they're not his close family. He saw them once. Of course, he was like 3.5 years old. Delphine and Lazaro went to Cardenas, Cuba 2 years ago, and they met the child and they were fond of the child. They were there for 2 weeks. That was the only exposure they had ever had to this little boy. Anyway, this is, there'll be 2 photographs in the paper tomorrow that we will see prominently. This will be one of them, and the other is going to be the child cowering in the closet with the gun pointed at Donato Dalrymple.
Maris Lacis this morning, of course, now she should be getting on a plane. She was speaking of photographs like this. She was making the point how worried she was about Elián, and I think if she could see the photograph of not this one, but this one, the one he is with now,
and now we have some
so
quotes to go along, Glenna, with this photograph. A Justice Department official was quoted as saying he, meaning Elián, looked very happy, and Juan Miguel was crying. That's what he or she said when asked to describe the reunion at Andrews Air Force Base near Washington. That official said that Juan Miguel boarded the boy's plane just moments after it arrived outside Washington and spent some time with him before getting off the aircraft. She said that Elián hugged his father tightly as the father carried him off the plane.
You know, with all due respect to the privacy of this family, I would have liked to have seen that moment of reunion. I think that might have been a very telling moment.
Well, if there are pictures available, I would think that the Justice Department would be willing to share them with the media, because there is concern. Again, who can forget the pictures that we've been showing you since early this morning of those armed agents removing the boy from the home, and of course looking at these pictures hours later. Glenna, you know, we talk about a 6-year-old and what a 6-year-old might go through. Does this say that they bounce back?
Well, I wouldn't speak for the 6-year-old community, since I'm the only one sitting here with any experience with a 6-year-old.
That's why I directed the question to you. dealing with young children, do they hold on to things?
No, from moment to moment. Okay. My experience has been that they're very momentary. I don't think 6-year-olds have a large grasp of past or future.
And now, if I may interrupt, we are looking at the videotape once again, and now we believe that rather than an INS agent, that indeed is Juan Miguel himself carrying Elián into this location in suburban Washington. We had been led to believe that in fact that was not the father, but that's the way Juan Miguel González walks from what we have seen, and so apparently that was subsequent to him going on board the airplane, taking the child, driving to the location, and that's where the family reunion evidently took place.
And of course that video becomes more clear because we have some facts to go along with the pictures. When we were describing the pictures earlier and talking about the immigration agent was carrying him, now we know that Juan Miguel in fact went aboard the plane and himself carried the boy off, so we know that he now carried him into that building.
You know, we have seen Juan Miguel González on various occasions address the American public, speak publicly. We've seen his many moods. We've seen him do a not so delicate gesture to the cameras. We've heard reports from his family here at first what a loving father he was. We've heard he was an alleged child abuser. We've heard so much about this man, and now we look at a family photo. However, it bears saying that here, the family here, and indeed the entire Cuban community here, fears that Elián, if he does go back to Cuba with his father, will not be with his father at all, but the son of Fidel Castro, and treated as such. And that needs to be considered when you talk of the people here and how passionate they are, that he does not return. I don't think anyone would deny Juan Miguel González his son. Their fear is that he goes back to Cuba with him.
You know, this is the video that was taken, I believe, when Lázaro and Delphine went to Cardenas in 1998, as you see stamped there on the video, September 1st. And the woman in the picture earlier was Elián's mother, Elizabeth Brotans Rodriguez. While we're watching this video, I've just been handed a statement from presidential candidate George W. Bush. We heard Dwight had quoted earlier from Al Gore, so here's what George W. Bush, the Republican presidential nominee to be, says. He says, quote, "I am profoundly saddened and troubled that the administration was not able to negotiate a resolution and instead decided to use force to take a little boy from the place he calls home in the middle of the night. When Elián's mother gave her life to bring her son to the land of the free, she could not have possibly dreamed that it would have come to this. Ours," he says, "is a nation of laws, not guns. Custody disputes are resolved in the calm of a courtroom, not in the terror of middle-of-the-night raids." That is the statement from George W. Bush of Texas, who is the presumptive Republican presidential nominee.
As we look at these pictures of the reunion between Elián González and his father, if you happen to just be joining us and you're wondering what's this all about, well, let's backtrack, if you will. 5:15 this morning, federal immigration agents removed Elián González from the home. He is screaming there. More than 100 agents were involved in this operation, many of them
to be very supportive of Janet Reno, who as you might expect, is not a popular person in this crowd today. That person was actually brought into the yard of the Gonzalez family home around the side of the house for her protection, presumably. She was talked to and urged to leave as she was taken out, and you're seeing the end process here as she is led down the street by protesters. No police on the scene at this point. Protesters urging her, taunting her, and jeering her as they escorted her away. For the most part, we have not seen many Miami police officers around the home. They have kept back. There had been one minor moment of tension between police officers and protesters, and since that happened, the police have backed away. It has been, for the most part, a very peaceful scene here in front of the house, but the tempers do flare at times, and one surefire way of doing that is by indicating that you are in any way supportive of the raid that was purposeless.
To be a very
for you. You can see off to the right there, more tear gas has just been deployed. That's over there behind the business. So I'm not sure exactly what was happening over there.
Right, we know you're having to tighten the mask there to keep it all out.
Exactly, as we continue to look down the street now. But you can see down the way there, and I'm going to zoom in for you. Forgive me, I am not a photographer. My photographer's been overcome by tear gas and has had to leave. But you can see down the way, more gas being deployed.
And the police are moving in.
And the police are moving in. And look, more demonstrators down there, mixed in with the news photographers and whatnot. But it's been like this, cat and mouse, rolling confrontation. The police move in, they use the tear gas, the crowd scatters, the crowd reforms, the tear gas is used again, and so it goes. Forgive my camera work there. I'm trying to keep one eye in the viewfinder.
You're doing great. You're doing
and
great.
one eye on my surroundings as we continue to watch this situation play out.
Yeah, and again, this is Flagler Street, 1 block north of 27th Avenue. That's directly in front of the Dade County Auditorium. There, another blast of tear gas.
Yes, there is another big plume of tear gas.
Tighten up there, Gary.
Going up, exactly. That's what I've got to be careful of. I can tell you that I feel the skin burning on my neck and on my ears and forehead, the area not covered by the mask. The air here is very, very heavy with this gas that's being used. The police trying to clear these streets, trying to keep them cleared. But as you can see, the cat and mouse, the run and gun demonstrations continue as this unrest continues.
Gary,
in our town.
You go ahead and catch your breath there. You've done a great job. We know you need to try and catch your breath there. We'll check in with you in just a little bit, but take care in the meantime.
You know, it's very easy to lose perspective when you see these pictures that this is really a small pocket, because we also have a live picture from outside of Elián's house. Some of these people have been out there for months.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the die-hard fans who've been out there, sleeping out there, basically living out there, and look how peaceful it is.
Yes.
Yeah. So we can't lose perspective as to the fact that it appears that there are just some hot pockets that are becoming very difficult for police to handle.
And really, it's that one right there on 27th Avenue in Flagler, because the other ones have been very, very quiet and peaceful.
I think we have Lisa Cabrera live outside the house there. Lisa, are you listening?
No, not yet. We'll go to her in just a few minutes. But I have seen a very interesting banner. It's a swastika, and I've seen Reno's name on it, but just some... And Bill Clinton's name on it. Thank you, Heather. So just some very unhappy people out there.
A moment ago, I was about to read the statement from Sister Jean O'Loughlin, who, of course, hosted the grandmothers when Elián was reunited with his grandmothers back in January, and then more recently, the meeting with Janet Reno and Lazaro, Marislasis, Elián González at her home. She is spending Holy Weekend in prayer. Not available for the media, but she did make the following statement, and I'll read it for you. Quote, "I am heartbroken and devastated. I was shocked that a peaceful transfer, which according to all reports appeared so close, failed to materialize. It's a real travesty of justice that this had to come to such a needless and violent transition." Quoting once again, "My only hope lies in the promise of resurrection. that from this devastation, a new life can arise for all concerned, Sister Gina Locke.
Just want to let you know, we have a number up now. It's a Neighbors for Neighbors number. It's 305-597-4404. If you have concerns or questions about street closures or anything, give them a call. They can point you in the right direction. Also, let me go ahead and give you the Miami Rumor Control Hotline number. It's 305-579-1800. And Miami-Dade County Rumor Control Hotline, 305-598-7555.
What we want to do now is take you inside the house just after this, where Maurice Laces Gonzalez is just absolutely torn up and emotional. And the man one of the fishermen who had rescued Elián from the sea Thanksgiving Day, Donato Dalrymple, the two of them are talking to reporter Carrie Sanders, who is a network reporter working in a pool situation for all of the media. Let's take a look at this tape as they explain what happened on the inside of the house. The other guys came in.
Them rocks and debris.
Yeah, I've been told. I asked a police officer what they're throwing at them, and the rocks, whatever they can find, pick up sticks, cans, whatever is nearby or in the streets. So it is. It's a wave of intensity. It gets very intense, and then it dies down. It gets very intense, and it dies down as these people are tear gassed repeatedly.
And Elaine, the activity has kind of moved now from 27th to more the area of 57th?
It's moved up, and it's actually sort of moved that way and that way, north and south or east and west. It's just kind of, this is the area where nothing seems to be right now, and people kind of come towards and flock and gravitate towards this intersection here, and then that's when the police come in and push them back again.
And then the police go back, and as we can see, police are more in a restful mode now after going through with a show of force. I suppose they're gearing up to have to go in again if they have to.
That's right. I believe this is a fresh line of police. What happens is they fire the tear gas, they fall back, and a new line forms. They go up, fire the tear gas, fall back, and a new line forms.
And as far as arrests now at this point, Elaine, just before we came to you, we saw two more younger men being arrested, peacefully arrested, it looked like.
I've lost count of the number of arrests. There have been a lot of arrests here today, at least several dozen.
Obviously, there have been sporadic acts of vandalism. There have also been some traffic blockages. But aside from those things, can you report to us that you've seen anything else of perhaps a more intrusive or violent nature?
No, that is it. And I want to point out, though, too, because once the people disperse and they come off to the sides and they're wiping their eyes, they're very quiet. They don't say a lot, and they cry, and then they go right back. So in the way of getting the people out of the streets, it's working, but these people are valiant. They want to stay here, and they want to speak their minds.
You say these people. How big a group is it? Is that the picture we were seeing a little while ago?
I'm not sure exactly what you're seeing, Rick. I don't have a monitor. But the crowd has definitely thinned out here, but there are several hundred in the area, I would say.
Okay, and we're looking at an intersection now where there are people mingling about, probably, I don't know, 50, 60 people maybe in that intersection?
Right.
Okay, and those are the ones who were just recently pushed back by the field force?
I believe so. I believe so. It's hard for me to tell since I can't see what you're seeing, but if it's near the 30th, Flagler and 30th Street, then that's probably, yes, you're right. Those are the people who've just been pushed back.
And have you seen absolutely no traffic movement at this point, Delane?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
At this point, from our shots, it looks like there is no traffic moving in that area at all.
Traffic is definitely thinned out here. The police are stationed at the intersection of Flagler and 27th, so a lot of people are not getting by this area. Can't say what is going on in the surrounding areas.
Okay, well, we are looking from a shot high above, and it really looks like police have successfully at least blocked that area off from any traffic, trying not to complicate the situation there.
Earlier, I do want to point out, earlier I spoke with a woman whose husband is actually out here somewhere. She said that he is a Cuban American, and she wanted to point out that they feel it too, and they are hurting too. And even though he is on this side of the fence, he feels it too, and he is told that he is just to do his job and to do it with as much force as possible to keep the peace, and that is what he's doing. And she told me that she wanted to send a message to everyone to please keep the calm, stay cool, and be peaceful.
All right, let's Delane, Matthew, thank you very much. We'll check back with you later. Let's check in with Mark London now. I understand you may have had a word with Al Diaz. He's the gentleman who took some of those pictures inside the home, Mark?
Rick, we just had a conversation with Alan, who took what may have been the picture of his professional career early this morning. The photograph by Alan Diaz, the Associated Press. He does not want to talk on camera about this, but we had an extended conversation with him just a little while ago. He said he'd been up because he couldn't sleep. He'd been outside the house all night, just thinking that something might happen. And then he heard a commotion. He jumped the fence. He charged through the front door of the house, and people yelled, "The kid's in there, the kid's in there." Alan went from room to room looking for the child. Finally, he encountered this scene of the agent with a Donato Dalrymple clutching the child at the entrance of the closet. I asked him, what did he think when he saw that? And as a true professional photographer, he said, "Shoot it." That's what his thought was. He called the scene ugly. He said the kid was crying. Alan Diaz, he said to the child in Spanish, "Don't worry, everything's going to be all right." All the while, of course, snapping away pictures on a digital camera. I asked him if he thought this would be the picture of his career. He said, I guess so. The man is very tired. His eyes are still red from the gas that was sprayed by the agents as they arrived. He said the situation caught him by surprise. He should have had a wider angle camera, a wider angle lens with him. He said to Maris Lacy's, "Get towels and water," because people inside were suffering from the gas. And he says that amid all the tumult of what was going on, she did that. She got towels and water so people could try to get some relief from the gas. He said he continued snapping some pictures on his way out of the house, and then one of his fellow AP photographers ran up to him and yelled, "Give me the disc." So he took the disc out of the camera containing the images, and of course it was moved via phone lines and probably satellite. And
State Road 836 at 27th Avenue, 826 to the eastbound 836, Lejeune Road near MIA and the 836 off-ramp there. Certainly was some activity earlier, but we thought we had seen traffic moving along. Things could have gotten started again. Chopper 4 is in the process of refueling. We'll be up again to check it all out, but those are areas you might want to avoid.
Yeah, a lot of activity along State Road 836, and we saw earlier that the traffic had been stopped. If you're going westbound on State Road 836, the Dolphin Expressway, and a lot of people who are staying on Miami Beach who may be headed to the airport would normally take State Road 836 westbound, get off on Lejeune Road and go to the airport. A better idea today might be to take the 112, the Airport Expressway, which is to the north, take the Julia Tuttle Causeway across the bay, and then go to State Road 112, the Airport Expressway, to Lejeune Road, and that way you can go southbound to the airport, and hopefully you won't run into a problem there trying to get to the airport.
195 then to 112 to Lejeune.
Yes.
Okay. Angela, Elián, a moment ago you were alluding to the chaos in the house moments after the raid took place. We have some tape now we can show you of just some sound just to explain what it was like inside the house.
Yeah, this was a pool reporter who was sent in. He was selected amongst all the reporters to go into the house and speak with Maris Lacy's as she
and like this, and he said, "Yes, Mark. Yes, I did."
To viewers who might be wondering, should they attempt to do any business in around those areas, there's a rumor control hotline that's been opened. You can find out if the particular business that you need to go to is opened or closed by calling the rumor control hotline. They may be able to help you. That number is 305-579-1800. Again, the rumor control hotline is open now, 305-579-1800. Rumor control hotlines have been very helpful in the past in this community.
And, you know, we should point out also that in our phone interview with Miami-Dade Mayor Alex Pinellas several minutes ago, Mayor Pinellas said that there will be some kind of organized rally, peaceful rally, obviously, to allow people to come together and to express their discontent. There will, I'm sure, be speakers, and we are waiting to hear from the mayor's office about a time and a place for that. He said that it could be as early as tomorrow, but there are a lot of people on the streets who don't need to wait for an organized protest. They are taking their protest to the streets at this moment.
And the scene you are looking at right now, the artwork and the signage you are watching, is in front of the Gonzalez family home in Little Havana, 23rd Avenue and 2nd Street Northwest. And that is where Mark Joyella has been camped out at the media encampment just across the street. Although, Mark, Elián is not there, Maris Lacis and Lazaro are not there. What is everyone doing or waiting for at this point?
Well, Glenna, you raised an interesting point. There is certainly a sensation here that somehow something has changed and something is missing. There is no focus to this neighborhood any longer. There, with Elián being gone from the house, in fact, the entire family apparently gone to Washington. Demonstrators are essentially gathered here with no real idea of what to do next, and perhaps there is that need for an organized protest of some sort. Many of the people here in this crowd that has, to an extent, dwindled a little bit from earlier today. There's probably 200 people here right now, for the most part, keeping very quiet, waving banners, at times breaking into chants and shouting and at one point singing, but for the most part, standing idly by as if waiting for some instruction on how to carry on the protest. And many people have left, perhaps to go to other parts of the city where things are not quite as peaceful. Perhaps they are headed home.
Well, and I'm sure they're going to be following, as indeed we are, what happens when they get to Washington and they make a request to try to meet with Elián and Juan Miguel and his wife and their baby son. We played just a minute ago a videotape of Maris Lacis and Donato Dalrymple explaining from their point of view what happened when the agents went into that house. In all fairness, there is another side of the story, and that is a side that was told at a news conference earlier by the Attorney General. Let's hear what Janet Reno had to say about it.
And in accordance with the Court of Appeals ruling, we will take every step necessary to ensure that Elián does not leave the country while the Court of Appeals injunction is in place. We have been to great lengths to resolve this case in the least disruptive manner possible. Up until the last, we tried every way we could to encourage Lazaro González to voluntarily hand over the child to his father. Unfortunately, the Miami relatives rejected our efforts, leaving us no other option but the enforcement action. Elián González is a child who needs to be cherished, who needs to have quiet time and private time, and to be with his father. And that is what this case is still all about. The bond between a father and son. Juan Miguel González wants to be with his son, and that will happen now.
That was what Attorney General Janet Reno had to say early this morning, shortly after Elián was taken out of that house, and her critics would see it as self-justification. On the other hand, she has been saying for months now that the last thing she wanted to do was send agents into the house to snatch, as it were, to snatch the child away, but that's what she felt in the end she had to do.
Yet on the other side of that, Michael, as we heard from Mayor Pinellas, Mayor Carollo, several others, they wanted the talks to continue. That the talks have been going on for, as we've reported, weeks, and there was a last-minute effort last night where they were really pressing to reach some kind of agreement. In fact, when we left last night, after the Eyewitness News Night beat at 11, we thought that maybe they would reach some agreement, only to find out this morning that it didn't happen.
Well, they were on the phone negotiating at the moment those agents went in, and in fact, we received a paper from the González family showing that at 4:30 they made they faxed one of the last their offers to the Justice Department, and the sticking point was where should the family get together. The offer put forth by Lazaro González's family at 4:30 was, let's find a place in Miami-Dade County, a neutral place where Juan Miguel González can come and meet with us. The Justice Department clearly did not want this to happen in Dade County, and and Juan Miguel Gonzalez refused to come to South Florida. They wanted to have this meeting somewhere else. So even if
that's the same argument that has
Right.
been pointed out over and over again.
And then the other issue, in addition to the dispute over a neutral site in Miami or anywhere else, then the other issue, which they never agreed on, both sides never agreed on, was the issue of the transfer of custody. I mean, we know that for the last 10 days, Lázaro González did not have the legal authority to have custody of Elián. That had been revoked, and the custody had been transferred to Juan Miguel. Nevertheless, of course, Lázaro and his family still had the child as in their possession, as it were, and the transfer of the custody, legally that is, just never was resolved as well. So, you know, the negotiations, even though there were some powerful people involved in the last minute, the negotiations, and here is a protester who has been marked up, free Elián, free Elián. I mean, you know, the negotiations appear, even though they were talking, it did not look like they were making much progress.
You mentioned the people who were brought in, Michael. Wasn't the bottom line it was still up to Lázaro González to sign off on whatever was going to happen?
Well, it was. He had to agree, and on the other side, Gregory Craig had been taken a very hard line on behalf of Juan Miguel. I mean, these were just people who had dug in their heels and were not going to move. And some people, powerful people, the president of the University of Miami, other influential business people tried to bring their influence to bear, and it just wasn't enough.
But under the best of circumstances, how could that have changed anything? Are we talking about influential people in this community saying to the González family, look, let's do it this way? I'm not quite sure what they expected to happen over the last 24 hours that hasn't happened for the last few months.
Yeah. Well, what they saw and what apparently Lázaro González could not see was this kind of a raid on the horizon. I think that people who know how the government works realize that you can't essentially thumb your nose at the Attorney General of the United States and just do it with impunity. At some point, there is going to be a reaction.
Well, there was no reaction when the 2 o'clock deadline passed on that Thursday. So if I'm Lázaro González, what's to lead me to believe that anything's going to be different? Another deadline will be set.
That's why when you have people like the former U.S. attorney as your attorney, as your private counsel, when the President of the United States says the time has come for the child to be reunited with his father, that is when one would expect your lawyer would come to you and say, we've got only a few hours left. If there's going to be a deal, we've got to do it now.
But why would you believe that if you're Lázaro González? Because you only had a few hours left when you were approaching 2 o'clock?
Because it's different this time, and if you listen to your attorneys, if you listen to people who are working on your behalf, then you better take their advice. And I don't know, I guess Lázaro González just simply was not ready to take the advice.
And in fairness, Janet Reno and the Justice Department had met many of the demands that Lázaro González had put forth, and by their accounts, he kept raising the bar. Every time a demand was met, he'd backpedal a little bit and make another demand. And
again, not to sound like a partisan, but the family here had said, why doesn't he come? Why doesn't Juan Miguel come? Then he came. Why doesn't he come? Why doesn't he come here? And he wouldn't come here, but then they continued to say, we will not deliver the boy, but if they come here and knock on the door, we'll turn the boy over.
You know, you bring up an interesting point, and I think what everyone here was saying, especially people who are parents who know what a parental bond feels like, many people were saying they did not understand why Juan Miguel González on day one did not get on a plane or get in an inner tube if he had to be with his son. And I think that's something that a lot of people just did not get and made them question Juan Miguel and his intentions.
And then, of course, a number of people will question why couldn't just plainclothes officers walk up in the middle of the day, ring the doorbell, and ask for custody of the child as opposed to going in with the weapons. And the Attorney General has been asked that question, why the weapons, and her response, as you'll recall, Glenna, this morning was the fact that they didn't know if there were any weapons inside the house or if anyone outside the house might have been carrying a weapon.
In assessing that situation, they probably thought that would not have come to a successful conclusion, that human chain would have been built and they wouldn't have gotten through. Michael.
Once again, we are looking at live pictures, and if I'm not mistaken, this is Lejeune Road, 42nd and Flagler. This is where the dumpster was set on fire, and traffic is clearly being disrupted because the dumpster is still out in the street. And once again, these are pictures from the home in Little Havana. Now, one of the negotiators last night who was trying to get a settlement is a very influential but very low-profile Cuban-American businessman in South Florida. His name is Carlos Saladrigas. Mr. Saladrigas is, as I say, extremely successful. He does not seek publicity, but he entered into the negotiations because he really does care for this community. At a news conference earlier this morning, he talked about the negotiations and his disappointment. Here's what Mr. Saladrigas had to say.
And the Attorney General and the administration had the audacity to say that she thought we were not negotiating in good faith. My two conclusions are very simple. Either they are bigoted and they just don't believe that a Hispanic or a Cuban American can negotiate in good faith, or, and I have never used this word, she's a liar. And I am here calling the Attorney General of the United States a liar.
Well, it doesn't get much stronger than that, does it? That is Carlos Saladrigas. I think you have to understand that he, like Kendall Coffey and the other people involved in the negotiations, had stayed up all night. They were very tired. I'm not criticizing, defending what he is saying. I'm simply saying, just remember, this is somebody who hadn't slept in hours and hours and hours, and who had worked hard to try to effect a solution and had not succeeded.
And he just entered into these negotiations, but he's talking to someone in Janet Reno and the people at the Justice Department who have been involved in this for several weeks and months. So he's, they come from different perspectives, surely. It was new to him, but clearly old to her. We have Eyewitness News reporter Mark Joyella, who has a new development to tell us about. Mark, can you hear me, Mark?
Dwight, yes, I can. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Let's bring you up to date on a situation we told you about just a few moments ago. A disturbance here outside the Gonzalez family home in Little Havana, and this one had everything to do with the passionate feelings toward Janet Reno among the protesters out here. Let's take a look at the videotape that we shot just a few short minutes ago of a situation that developed when someone in the crowd apparently spoke positively or showed some degree of support for the government's raid on the house this morning that resulted in Elián being removed. Well, the gentleman that you see here in the middle of the screen is somebody who did not say anything, but rather jumped to the support of a woman who had expressed that opinion that Janet Reno had done the right thing. That woman was obviously jeered. She was spit at. People threw things at her. The man who is being surrounded in this videotape is somebody who tried to help her get out of the crowd. Now, this situation deteriorated with protesters following the woman and the man, and then, as you can see here, this turned into a fist fight with protesters throwing punches and kicking at this man, and who had come to the aid, we're told, of a woman who the only thing she had done that we know of is to criticize, or at least to show support, rather, for Janet Reno and the federal officers that came in here this morning. Now, Miami police did move in. They broke this up. The man who had been descended upon by some of the protesters was taken away, and we do not know his condition. But just an indication that as peaceful, for the most part, as things have been here outside the Gonzalez family home, it does not take much to get people very upset, and they are still extremely angry, even though they are not setting things on fire here in this neighborhood.
Okay, Mark. Mark Gioia, thank you for that update. We want to break away. There's a breaking story right now that has nothing to do with this situation. Eyewitness News reporter Joda Unruh is in Sky 10, where there is a plane in the water. Where are you, Joda?
We're right now just east of Sheridan. We are at Hollywood Beach, and as you can see, about 300 yards offshore is a plane down. It appears to be a small plane. We don't know exactly. We just got on the scene ourselves a little while ago. Don't know if how many people were in the plane, if anyone has been rescued. There are several Coast Guard vehicles pulling up near to the plane. There's a kayak there that keeps circling the plane that's down. As you're aware, on weekends a lot of these banner planes fly up and down the coastal area and the beaches. But again, we don't know what the plane was or exactly how many people were on board and if anyone has been rescued as yet.
Okay, we'll continue. Joda, we're having a problem hearing you. We're going to continue to follow this situation and try to get some more information for you. Again, a plane in the water. We'll make some phone calls and try to get some information, and we'll get it right to you. Let's get back to the continuing story that we are following and go back to Eyewitness News reporter Mark Gioia, who is outside the Gonzalez home. Mark, you have been there for hours now. Judge the level of passion 9 hours later in terms of the folks who were there as opposed to shortly after the incident.
Well, Mark, Dwight, I'll tell you yeah, I can hear you. I will tell you that the really noticeable difference in the emotional state of the protesters, many of whom have been out here since before dawn, many of whom witnessed what happened at this house just after 5 o'clock this morning. Earlier in the day, these were people who were shocked, literally stunned. You could see it in their faces, many of them crying and very upset, never truly believing that it would come to this, even though for there was every reason to believe that it could. They did not believe it. But as the day has gone on, I think anger has built up in folks out here at the house. And even though they are keeping, for the most part, peaceful, it does not take much to let that anger flare up, as we saw in that videotape just a moment or so ago when somebody who said something that was supportive of Janet Reno and her raid on this house early this morning was surrounded, and it ended in a fist fight. Someone knocked to the ground, kicked, and punched. These are people who are very, very angry, and while they are not doing anything as far as, at least right here inside the home, doing anything as far as blocking traffic or lighting fires, they certainly feel the same passion.
And Mark, that's something that we've seen in the past weeks. People who have dared to show up outside that house, who favored reuniting Elián with his father, have been spit at and pushed aside and shoved and needed escorts to get out of the crowd. And many people who have been in that crowd were criticized for that, were criticized for denying, as critics would say, the First Amendment rights of someone who had opposing views to theirs, and something that they have been utilizing quite well as members, citizens of the United States, their own First Amendment rights out there.
Yeah, I remember as we look at another live shot here, and I'm not sure of the location. It's Matt Lorch, who is at Flagler and Lejeune, I believe. Yes, Matt, are you there?
Yes, Michael, I can hear you. We are here at Flagler and Lejeune, where firefighters just showed up to put out another fire. On the corner, you can see there is a large group of peaceful protesters, but it seems like from watching this intersection that the few troublemakers will actually try to excite those peaceful protesters, urging them to commit vandalism. Now, we caught a few of the vandals in the act and tried to get a perspective on their motivation, and here's what they had to say along with the peaceful protesters and those caught in the mix. I saw you light that fire. Why'd you do it? What does it prove?
Because I feel that they're doing to Elián González, that's not correct, you know?
What does lighting a fire in the street do? How does that help the situation?
I just want to feel like doing it. I feel like doing it. I just feel like doing it.
How can it help? What does it prove?
Yeah, because the police don't hate the people, you know, because I do it. I want to kill the police.
It doesn't help. I'm not totally agree with it, but you can't stop. See, when you guys, and when I say you guys, I mean when you guys protect in Washington, you burn down the city. When the black people protect, they burn down the neighborhood. We're not burning down anything. I don't approve of none of this violence. It is not going to get us nowhere. You're totally wrong. It's not going to get us nowhere. We try to be peaceful. We need to be peaceful if we're going to get our point across. But you got in the crowd people that will do this. Eventually happens.
I just moved here last week. I'm trying to go to the airport.
And what's the most frustrating thing about this?
Look, it's supposed to be non-violent. Everybody said there was never going to be any violence. I just called the police 3 times.
So you heard it there, severe frustration for that man trying to make his way down Lejeune Road to the airport. You heard peaceful protester talk about how he can't control the violent protesters that are committing vandalism. And you heard a few of the vandals that we caught in the act say that they just feel like acting out against the police.
Some fascinating sound, Matt, and obviously anybody trying to travel northbound on Lejeune Road to get to Miami International Airport is not going to be able to do it. You better try to find an alternative route as we watch firemen arriving there to work once again on that dumpster. Kind of fascinating. I love your question of the young man, the first man in that video, when he says, quote, "I just felt like doing it." That's not much of a rationale.
Yeah, when confronted, most of these protesters, the ones that are committing the majority of the vandalism, don't have good reason for what they're doing. They just feel like acting out. And when asked about the issue, they just say, well, what Janet Reno did was wrong, what President Clinton is doing is wrong, and that is the repeated answer that I've heard time and time again. Michael?
I don't want to sound mock philosophical here, but it is a truism. Violence begets violence. And I'm afraid what we are seeing are people who are justifying their violence by what they saw happen at that home this morning.
And Michael, you really have two voices on the street today. You have the voice that is saying, let's make our point peacefully by holding our signs, by chanting our chants. And then you have the voice that is saying, no, let's cause some civil disobedience. Let's make our point known. And unfortunately, from what I've seen, it seems like the louder of those two voices, at least at this intersection, is the troublemakers.
I don't want to sound like a psychologist or an analyst of any sort, but when people feel like they are not in control, one way to handle that is they lash out. And clearly these people tried to control what happened using what they could, their prayers, their protests. They lost this particular battle, and maybe they feel so out of control that this is their gut lashing out. There is no reason. If you ask for logic in this instance, you probably will get little, as we've seen.
And it should be noted, Glenn and Michael, that efforts are underway by responsible leaders in this community, like Miami-Dade Mayor Alex Pinellas, to organize something so that people can vent. But while that's being done, it takes some time to put something like that together. The mayor told us earlier that perhaps it'll happen as early as tomorrow. These are the scenes that we were seeing in the street. And we must make it clear that the folks who are committing a lot of the violence don't represent most of the folks in this community.
No, they do not. And although you're absolutely right, Glenna, I think people are not thinking very much. They're simply acting, and they're acting out of emotion and a sense of powerlessness, which often is the cause of violence, as you say. But I think that in a more rational moment, if some of these people would realize that it's a far cry from saying that Elián is going to go back to Cuba. This is an intermediate step. And what the court in Atlanta has said, has guaranteed, is that he will not be leaving the country until that court and maybe other courts have dealt with the issue of whether he can apply for political asylum. And people should remember that if the court in Atlanta says that he can apply for political asylum, then that process is going to take at least, one would think, a couple of weeks. And even if they lose on an asylum claim, these attorneys have told me that they will go to the United States Supreme Court. And the United States Supreme Court, not to get too technical, they will file for a writ of certiorari. They will ask the Supreme Court to consider their case. The Supreme Court will get that request. It will take them weeks to rule on it. And then by next fall, the Supreme Court would say, yes or no, we'll hear your case. Then, conceivably, the Supreme Court could even say next fall, we'll hear your case and we'll decide it next spring.
Then are you saying that Juan Miguel González could be in Washington until next fall?
If you follow absolute due process, legal experts who I have talked to say if you absolutely follow every bit of due process, That's as long as this case could last in the appeals process. Whether politically Janet Reno lets that go on, I just have no way of knowing. I have a feeling
said he won't leave the country with the child.
Well, here's a question. The injunction that is in effect right now is that Elián has to stay in the country until May 11th, or until the appeals process that's set to begin on that day is heard.
Is finished. Yes.
Now, once that's finished, whichever way the appeals court rules, if the attorneys for the family, let's say they lose and they go ahead and appeal to the Supreme Court again, is that injunction still in effect, or can Juan Miguel then leave?
That's a very good question. And while I'm going to try to answer that, we're looking at photographs that were put out about an hour and a half ago of Elián. That is he with his younger half brother, and there is the family portrait of Juan Miguel holding his son, and of a very happy, smiling Elián González, a face that only a few hours later had been full of terror. Let me go back to the legal point. I am told by legal... Yes, wait a minute. Let's go back here to a live shot at Matt Lorch. Matt, are you speaking to us?
I am, yeah. After seeing our live shot, there was a group that had come over here and really wanted to make their point known. Actually, I was trying to contact the producers when I was speaking to you, but you can just see how it is continuing out here. And right, well, like I said, right when the police leave, it seems like the cars seem to lock the intersection. I didn't mean to interrupt. Back to you, Michael.
Okay. I don't know that I was saying anything profound, but what I was going to say was, as the legal process has been explained to me, if the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta should rule sometime after May 11th that the INS does not have to give the child an asylum hearing, the only avenue left to the lawyers at that point is to go to the U.S. Supreme Court and say, give us an injunction to prevent the child from leaving the country. And if the Supreme Court says, we're not going to give it to you, then it's over. So if you look at it that way, then we are looking at maybe the third week of May. The legal process would be over. The court order forbidding him from leaving the United States would be dissolved. And at that point, about roughly a month from now, Elián, under that scenario, would go back to Cuba.
But wouldn't immediately the attorneys for the Miami family say, well, the highest court in the land hasn't heard this. I'm appealing the appeals court decision to the United States Supreme Court. Well, I haven't had my full day in court. I haven't exhausted my legal appeals.
Yeah, at some point you have exhausted your legal appeals. We are looking at this live shot, and now, Matt Lorch, if you hear us, have police begun to move in? Why are these people running? Well, there's tear gas. That's the answer.
You can see it right in front of you, Michael. In fact, there's a protester. He's going to try to pick it up and throw it back, but he couldn't get a grip, and as you can see, the tear gas took quick effect. He quickly grabbed his eyes and had to move away. Police and firefighters have been moving back to this intersection repeatedly throughout the morning and now afternoon. Here you can see some protesters over here picking up pieces of a garbage can that are made of stone and throwing those out into the street in the direction of police. Looking around and trying to find the police presence, they actually threw the tear gas and then stepped back further south on Lejeune Road.
Yeah.
And obviously it looks as if the tear gas is having an effect as the protesters are now dispersing.
Yeah. You know, I have to say, as we watch a very angry woman screaming at the police, that one of the pleasures of living in a free society is that we can show you pictures, we can bring you these pictures, and I am sorry to say that these pictures may show up somehow on Cuban TV, and then Fidel Castro can say, you see, the Cuban mafia, they don't obey the law, look at the way they react when they don't get what they want. And now we're watching Miami police officers running in, and they are running towards the people who
throwing those items,
were throwing the items.
Of the broken trash can.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, we hear from our reporter in Havana, Martin Savage, that Castro has appealed to Cuban citizens to lie low, not to fill the streets, not to rally. And I believe he used the word to give the image that that we are prepared to let Elián come here peacefully.
He is the master. He is the master of PR. Of course, when he asks the Cuban people not to take to the streets, it's an order.
Yes.
and they will not, or else their local CDRs, the Committee for the Defense of the Revolution, will see to it. And there is a rather dramatic shot of
make arrests now.
Yeah, of Miami police making an arrest here.
Okay, let's cut away from these pictures for just a moment, because we want to go back to a situation that is breaking news. There was a plane in the water we showed you moments ago, and Joda Unruh is in Sky 10 above that scene. She has some more information for us. Joda?
Well, Dwight, just a piece of good news that we can tell you before we head back to the Little Havana area. We want to let you know there was only one person on board the plane, the pilot, and we are told that he only suffered very minor injuries and didn't even have to go to the hospital. In fact, however, the plane is down in the water about 300 yards off Hollywood Beach, east of Sheridan Street. That's it. Back to you guys.
Joda, we're having a problem hearing you. Could you repeat the last thing you said?
Okay, basically I said that the pilot was the only person on board. He suffered minor injuries. He was not transported to the hospital, I am told. The plane is down about 300 yards off Hollywood Beach, just a little south of Sheridan Street.
Okay, the pilot suffered minor
head
injuries.
Back now over to the Little Havana area. But
Okay, Joda, thank you for that live update from Sky 10. And now let's take you right back to Little Havana. You're looking at the home of the Gonzalez family right now. Michael, what's going to happen next in terms of the legal process? I guess right now we're just waiting for the Gonzalez family to arrive in Washington.
Right,
They're
and
going to demand a meeting with Elián and his father.
Right, I see. Let's calculate. It's about a 2-hour and 20-minute flight. If they left at 1:30, 2:30, about 3:30, Lazaro, Maris, Lacey's, Delphine, Georgina said the other family members arrive in Washington. I know there are members of the Cuban American National Foundation who have been working to help them whenever they are in Washington, and I suspect that they will be there to greet them at the airport. It's just an open question about what they do now. I think, as many people have said, that it's really rather unlikely that they're going to get a chance to see Elián.
But doesn't their trip to Washington, Michael, basically overcome one of the major obstacles in the agreement process, and that was where to meet? All right, it's clear where, if a meeting is going to take place, where it's going to take place now. So you could say they've given in on that issue. The boy's back with his father right now, and could the stage be set for the families to maybe get together, knowing that they can now agree on a place that it's going to be in Washington?
Well, I think that makes good sense, but on the other hand, Juan Miguel Gonzalez has been waiting a long time to be with his son, and I would just after, if you think about the fact that he has been called an abusive and unfit father by attorneys for Lazaro, why he would want to sit down with the family members now. He did tell Dan Rather in that 60 Minutes interview that he could forgive them, but that was earlier. I don't know if he can forgive them now. We'll just have to wait and see.
But then again, he may feel his feelings may change now that his son is back with him.
Well, yes,
and
that's
again,
true.
we don't mean to speak for him. You're looking at live pictures of reaction to what happened shortly after 5 o'clock this morning in Little Havana, when federal immigration agents moved in and forcibly removed Elián González from the home of his Miami relatives. Elián right now is well, if you haven't seen these pictures, then this represents an opportunity. This is a shot minutes after they arrived, 2 vans full of
perimeter. Right now you're looking at smoke in the area.
I think Peter Dench is at this location. Peter, can you help us out with what's going on here?
That's where Peter is.
Peter Dench.
Yeah, I can. There we have smoke in the horizon here, westbound on Flagler Street, west of 27th Avenue. A lot of people scurrying over to find out what is going on. It's hard to tell from here, but this has certainly been the largest fire that we've seen all day since we've been out here early this morning. A lot of stuff going on in this area, right in this immediate area, people being arrested still. Police have pretty much drawn back a smaller presence, but people sort of coming to this area is sort of a magnet to try and find out what's going on.
Peter, I know that let me orient people here. They are looking westbound on Flagler Street. Off to the right is the Dade County Auditorium, and generally there are some one-story, two-story businesses on the left side of Flagler as you go out there west. Do you have any idea what's on fire?
No, I don't. You know, that's just west of the Dade County Auditorium, and that's an area that many demonstrators have been at, going from here all the way out to where Matt Lorch has been out near Lejeune, and where we saw some shots as far as Red Road. But that looks to be at about around the area 32nd Avenue and Flagler. But we simply don't know what's on fire at this point. But this is the most smoke we've seen so far today. And again, this area that we're in, putting this all in perspective.
I think we lost Peter's sound there.
Yeah, Peter, we just lost you, but we are going to send Sky 10 over that scene, and we will get a better shot of the fire and be able to show it to you. Well, here is a wide shot from Sky 10, which has just been over Hollywood Beach, and Jilda Unruh is in Sky 10, and I know they are en route to the vicinity in Little Havana.
As we wait on Sky 10 to get closer to the scene of that fire, let's look back at what the president had to say this morning about Operation Reunion.
As all of you know, this morning, 6-year-old Elián González was reunited with his father, Juan Miguel González. The Department of Justice, under the leadership of Attorney General Reno, went to great lengths to negotiate a voluntary transfer. Even yesterday, the Attorney General worked very hard on this late into the night, showing great restraint, patience, and compassion. When all efforts failed, there was no alternative but to enforce the decision of the INS and the federal court that Juan Miguel González should have custody of his son. The law has been upheld, and that was the right thing to do. I am well aware that this has been a difficult time for all the parties involved, but let's remember, as I said from the outset, the most important thing was to treat this in a lawful manner according to the established process. This was in the end about a little boy who lost his mother and has not seen his father in more than 5 months. I hope with time and support, Elián and his father will have the opportunity to be a strong family again. Thank you very much.
What was your role, and did you give the
President
go-ahead?
Clinton, a couple of hours ago, speaking about the operation which took Elián González out of Lázaro González's Little Havana home, saying that it was the right thing to do and the law was upheld. He defended the actions of Attorney General Janet Reno and complimented her, although not effusively, but he did support the Attorney General.
Sky 10 now heading toward the scene of where we've been watching that smoke grow, Flagler and 27th Avenue and thereabouts, where Peter Dench has been reporting on spot fires that people have been setting. Right now we're trying to find out a fire just west of Dade County Auditorium and what might be the circumstances surrounding that. Throughout the morning we've seen some extraordinarily peaceful vocal protests, and then there have been pockets of troublemakers who have taken it upon themselves to do what can only be called vandalism on certain intersections where there has been a heavy police presence, a field force, officers throwing tear gas to disperse the crowds who have become something other than peaceful.
You know, in a community of more than 2 million people who live in Miami-Dade County, we should point out that it is just a tiny percentage who have taken to the streets, and those who have taken to the streets, virtually all of them have been peaceful. It is really just a handful of people who have set fires and broken the law, not obeyed the law. And we don't know exactly until Sky 10 gets a little bit closer what the fire is all about. But as our Peter Dench had reported, this fire is in the vicinity of Northwest 32nd or 32nd Avenue and Flagler Street in Little Havana. And it is in an area where protesters had been running up and down and been having skirmishes with the Miami Police Department. So there is a likelihood that it has something to do with the Elián situation, but we are waiting to get more specific information.
As we watch this, you'll notice traffic is fairly light in this area of business, storefronts. In fact, we have received communication from our viewers, some email, people who do own businesses in that area, that the protests and what's going on there is hurting their business. A lot of people have decided to close up shop and leave in light of the crowds on the street and the mood there.
Let's see if Peter is available. That sign on the right there you just saw was the sign in front of the Dade County Auditorium. This is the intersection of 27th and Flagler. And Peter, don't know if you can hear me, but if you can, come on in and tell me what you know.
Well, at this point, not much. We're too far away simply at this point, but the billowing black smoke that we saw just moments ago has stopped. At least it's not as bad as what we saw. It's still smoldering some, but appears to be a little bit under control at this point. But again, around 32nd Avenue and Flagler Street, but from this point, we're simply too far away to tell. The two fire trucks just raced to the scene.
Yeah. Peter, are police in that vicinity still making arrests, or have the demonstrators backed off?
Yeah, they are still making arrests. As a matter of fact, we can come down this way and take a look at one of these policed wagons right over here, southbound on 27th Avenue, just south of Flagler. That's a van where they've just placed about 4 or 5 or 6 people into it, again blocking the street, taunting them, and giving them a warning, and then moving in very swiftly. So I don't know again what the hard count is, but we've seen quite a few people arrested from this vantage point, which is sort of a magnet. It's a very crucial key intersection right here at 27th Avenue at Flagler Street. A lot of police activity, far fewer police we saw, but also the police noticeably not seemingly discouraged by this, in actual good spirits. I mean, it's nothing that they haven't dealt with before, and by and large this hasn't been too bad in terms of what they've seen in the past.
Peter, we should explain that if people are wondering why that intersection, one of the reasons I think why that intersection is that it is one of the closest major intersections to the home of Lázaro González. Lázaro González and his family live really only about 7 or 8 blocks away from that intersection. Now Sky 10, I don't know if you can see this, Peter, Sky 10 is getting into the vicinity of the fire. We are looking at Flagler Street, and there is quite a crowd. We do see a fire engine in front of Sky 10. Can maybe move a little to the north, or where we're, I'm
Michael,
not. Yes, Gilda, can you?
Yes, we are up, but our cameras can get in a lot closer than we physically can right now. Right now, air traffic control is restricting our ability to get into that airspace.
Right.
So our camera has had to zoom in, but we are physically much further back and are being held back by Miami International Airport air traffic control at the moment.
We understand, and those are actually pretty good pictures when you get around on the north side looking south. Maybe if you could tell the Sky 10 pilot to move around that way, maybe we can kind of look down and get a better idea of what it is that is burning. We appreciate the fact that in these kinds of circumstances, air traffic control does not let news helicopters fly at will.
Well, and part of the problem, Michael, is now is a very busy time for planes coming in and landing, so that's one of the reasons that air traffic is restricting exactly where we can fly.
Absolutely.
Gilda, from where we're looking, it seems almost as if something on the ground is giving off smoke, much like those tear gas canisters. Right now, we haven't seen flames at all. It's very difficult to tell what it may be that's giving off all that smoke.
You're right. We don't see any flames at this point, and it has been primarily smoke. It appears from our pictures coming from the ground. Of course, we can't see on the other side of that building exactly what it might be, but have not seen any indication of flames, Glenna.
Well, part of, in my experience, that kind of billowing black smoke generally is some kind of a petroleum-based fire, oil-based fire, and well, we'll find out soon what it is, but I see a lot of people are down there, and the Miami Fire Department is down there. It's got a pumper, and they're working on it.
We'll let you know just as soon as we can get a little closer.
Thanks.
Okay, Gilda, thanks. What we want to do is take you just a few blocks from there to 23rd Avenue and 2nd Street, the González family home. By all accounts, most of the family is on a plane en route to Washington right now. Mark Joyella has been there all day, and Mark, it doesn't look like the crowd has lessened one bit since that family left.
No, Glenna, this has been a steady crowd. You can tell, though, that people have arrived here from outside the neighborhood, for one reason, because of the signs that they have brought. All of them refer to what happened earlier this morning, many saying we hold Clinton and Reno responsible. Another one that says we will not forget when it comes time to vote. But this, for the most part, has been a relatively calm crowd. A few flare-ups throughout the hours that have passed now since 5 o'clock this morning when people's emotions basically spilled over. But for the most part, this has been quiet. Miami police have taken one person away for that person's own protection after that person became the focus of some agitation in the crowd. But no arrests being made here as far as I'm aware. And at this point, it is rather peaceful here, even with all that is happening a few blocks away. And even from this vantage point, we can hear the sirens from where Peter Dench and some of the other Eyewitness News reporters are gathered.
You know, Mark, if I may, let me answer a question that nobody has asked, at least out loud. We see the sign there of a protester, a woman. It says, "One nation under God with liberty and justice for all." One of the refrains that I have heard constantly over the last several months is this one. Why doesn't this little boy enjoy the same protections as everybody else? Why do murderers on death row have appeals that go on for 10 and 15 and even 20 years, and this child cannot be protected by the courts? The answer actually is very simple. Elián González is not a citizen of the United States, and he does not enjoy all or even most of the protections of the Constitution, which every other citizen of the United States has. He was, if I may say, his legal status was he was paroled into the United States. He has never even been what the INS calls admitted into the United States formally.
And compounding that, he's a minor who legally cannot ask for that, cannot ask for asylum. The INS ruling on that says anybody can ask for asylum and has been under question. Does that mean a minor who can't vote, who can't ask for something in his best interest in any other case? And his father, who is here, who has been determined to be a fit father, has that right on his son's behalf.
And as we ponder that whole issue and look at these live pictures of the reaction to what happened, we are joined on the phone by Ramon Saul Sanchez, the head of the Democracia movement. We saw you earlier, sir, trying to prevent people from committing acts of vandalism. First of all, give us, as we're watching these pictures right now, you were there, you tried to stop people from throwing things at the marshals as they were leaving, and we understand that you were injured. I see some blood on your forehead now. Can you take us back to that moment and talk to us about what happened there, Mr. Sanchez?
About 5:15 this morning, the marshals or the INS officials came storming into the yard of Elián González. I was at that point right in front of the door of the house, and they then came towards the house, and one of them hit me in the head with the rear part of an assault rifle.
Why did, Ramon, it's Michael Putney, why were you struck? Did you stand in his way? Did he tell you, get out of my way, or did he just walk up and hit you?
No, he didn't tell me to get out of the way, but obviously we were in the way, in a non-violent way, as we had said. And he hit me in the head, and I dropped unconscious for a few minutes. Then they walked over me, and when they did that, somebody else was trying to cover me. A lady, another member of the movement, was trying to cover my body so that they wouldn't hit me further, and she got, I think, some broken ribs in the process.
If I could ask you just for a moment, what did you hope to accomplish by standing in the door?
Well, we had said that we were symbolically going to demonstrate our resolve if they were coming in with violence. We were going to approach them with non-violence, and that's what we did. It was a symbolic way of us saying, well, we don't want you to take Elián this way if you come with violence here. And obviously it was a very ugly way in which they did, with a weapon pointing at the child and at Donato.
What did you tell your supporters after the agents left, as you were trying to stop them from venting their anger and throwing things? What did you tell them in terms of what the next step might be?
I was asking them not to commit any acts of violence against anybody, that people were very frustrated and angry. And of course, sometimes they don't channel those emotions in a constructive way. And I was trying to tell them that, and I also I was trying to cope with a couple of incidents that people got a little beyond what they should have, and I was directly and personally dealing with those instances, trying to prevent violence in the crowd.
Ramon, in the past couple of weeks, we have seen you publicly teaching all of those people out there how to make human chains, how to protest nonviolently, how to make a point and prevent Elián from being taken out of the house without weapons. And I think this community has watched that happen, and so have the people in Washington responsible for ordering what happened this morning. My question to you is, do you think if you hadn't done that, in hindsight, if you had sort of stood back and allowed the law to take its place, do you think that this operation might have been done a little differently, maybe without weapons and in broad daylight?
Well, I need to remind people that in order for the people to channel their energies in a constructive way, sometimes you have to lead them into some kind of activity that then you have the more power to call them out of call that activity off, and they will respect you and do so. Unfortunately, we expected the authorities, when they came, were going to come in to do that in another way, not in the way they did it. We expected them to come here, and whenever they asked for the child, Lázaro had already said that he was going to allow them to come into the house, and they would have to take the child in front of everybody, and we would have refrained from doing any kind of demonstration at that moment, in accordance to what the family was asking.
Well, that said, though, and pardon me for interrupting you, that said, you did have people there under your tutelage offering to lay down and die before Elián could be taken from the home.
Well, if you have heard me repeatedly say to exhaustion that we were going to abide by the law, and we were going to the family was going to abide by the law in regards to surrendering the child, that they were not going to be part of it, but they were going to allow the federal marshals to come in and take him. And we said repeatedly that we were going to respect what the family wishes were at that moment. I have said that repeatedly, and we have talked to the crowd and asked the crowd to do the same, and they have indicated many times that they would do so.
I guess my question is, in hindsight, now that you see what has happened, if you had the power to go back and do things differently, would you?
I don't think we could have done anything different to prevent what happened, unfortunately. If we hadn't been there, I think probably things would have gotten a little bit worse than they happened. Also, I think it happened at a moment in which there were conversations going on between the government and the family, and everybody felt betrayed. They felt that they were not conducting those conversations in good faith, etc. I mean, there have been so many frustrations here that it's very hard to cope with this. And at this time, it's very hard to say, well, it was better if we had done it. It would have been better if we had done it this way or that way. Unfortunately, I think it was wrong to come here and go in there with weapons and point the weapons the way they did. It is a very unfortunate scene.
Ramon, we are looking at live pictures, and we've been showing pictures for the last many hours of demonstrations in the streets of Miami, some of them peaceful, but on the other hand, we have seen others that are involve vandalism and tires being burned and other incidents where there is unlawful activity. What would you say to people who want to engage in that kind of activity?
I thank you for the opportunity. I've been going from station to station, although I just came out of the hospital, but I have begun the round now, TV stations and radio stations, asking the people to please do not conduct any act of violence or vandalism, to demonstrate, which is a right that we have, and to exteriorize their frustrations, but to do so in a non-violent way, so that we do not harm anybody else or the property or do harm to our own cause.
Are you involved? Are you involved in actively organizing a kind of demonstration where people can peacefully get together and vent their emotions?
At this moment, what we're trying to do is we're trying to see how we convince people not to use violence. The leaders have met and a movement with them, and there are talks now about a work stoppage on Tuesday. Very preliminary talks at this point on next Tuesday, but the reality is that the people are upset right now, and we have to cope with this right now. We had repeatedly said to the government in many ways that we were not only concerned about what would happen at the moment that they were going to take the child if they did it in the wrong approach and in a violent approach like they did, but we were also concerned about the aftermath if that approach was a violent one. And unfortunately, we're seeing that right now, to some degree. Although I believe, from what I have heard from some authorities, that they have burned tires in a couple of places, and I think a garbage can, but they haven't done more than that. And we're urging the people to please refrain from committing any acts of violence or vandalism. To demonstrate, yes, we have the right and do it, and I think it's very American to do so, but it is detrimental to our community and to our cause and to the rights of other people for us to engage in any type of violence, and we discourage that totally.
A number of people in this community hope that those who are out doing random acts of violence will listen to your words. Ramon Saul Sanchez, the head of the Democracia movement, and we'll be hearing more from that group, I'm sure, in the next few days.
All right, now we're taking you back to what many call Ground Zero, the place that has become the focus of an international custody fight, 23rd Avenue and 2nd Street in northwest Miami-Dade County, the home of the Gonzalez family, where Mark Joyella has been covering the events there from Operation Reunion, the commando raid on this house when armed agents took Elián at 5:15 this morning, until now, what has become a gathering place for people who just want to come and be seen and vent to people who think like them. Mark, we've heard...
If by chance Elián would be allowed to stay.
Yeah, that will be very interesting, and perhaps the Justice Department has placed itself in a difficult situation where it may have to undertake a similar operation, but the appeals court would, as far as I understand it, would rule on whether Elián would deserve a political asylum claim. The three-panel judge that we heard from earlier in the week seemed to indicate that they are leaning towards that, allowing him a political asylum claim, but then that would be again on INS's court, and who knows how all of this will play out. But Gregory Craig, Juan Miguel Gonzalez's attorney, again repeated today that Juan Miguel is willing to stay through the appeals process, and we can only, at this point, we can only take their word.
As we watch the van with Lázaro González, Delphine, and Maris Lasis leave Washington National Airport with a police escort, just a little bit of reaction that's been coming in. Earlier today, Florida Governor Jeb Bush said that he is deeply disappointed by the actions taken by the Justice Department today, that in his opinion, that Elián's reunion with the father should not have happened this way. Governor Bush said that he felt that it could have been resolved without force, to extract Elián from the home of his Miami relatives. In fact, Governor Bush said that during a conversation he had with President Clinton last night, that the governor was assured that the intention of the White House administration was to resolve the matter in a voluntary, non-forcible way through negotiated agreement. Quite obviously, though, that did not happen.
And now we're seeing some sort of protest demonstration at the airport. We can't tell whether these are people who are in favor of Elián's being returned to his father or against, but they appear to be clapping. And they would be clapping for the family, so perhaps that gives us an indication that they're supporters of the family. And of course, you see the hordes of media following these people wherever they go. It's been interesting to hear Juan Miguel González and Gregory Craig, who of course lives in the United States, complain about the media horde. And as we know, working in this business,
Right.
we have the constitutional right to be where these things are happening. And it's interesting that because in other countries there is no such right, that some people would question the fact that the media seems to be everywhere. And indeed, we do seem to be everywhere.
Jack Hambrick found that the pictures, in fact, we just showed one earlier of Elián back with his father this morning at Andrews Air Force Base. Jack Hambrick, who was there, told us that that was taken to a 1-hour photo and quickly turned and redistributed to the media. So just the speed at which the visual images of this entire ordeal are spreading around. In fact, the photograph from Alan Diaz this morning of the INS agent with the automatic weapon and Donato and Elián in the bedroom of the home as the extraction was taking place was a digital camera and literally found its way around the world perhaps minutes after the federal agents had gone into the home.
And shortly after, I believe that there was a press release that went out from Gregory Craig's office asking the media not to publish those pictures, which again is interesting because Gregory Craig is an attorney who practices in the United States and is, I'm sure, at $800 an hour, well aware of the provisions for a free press that are made in the First Amendment, but went ahead and issued that, and then of course came out with his own pictures, which were okay to publish.
Fighting pictures with pictures. Elián seized, CBS 4 News continuing coverage. We are, Ileana Varela along with Steve Wolford, continuing to watch the events unfold as we stay with these live pictures from Washington, D.C., that van in the right lane with Lázaro Marislesas and Delphine González on their way to who knows what, a hopeful meeting with Juan Miguel González, but no deals at this point. This day began just after 5 o'clock with federal agents, 8 agents, going into the home in Little Havana, forcibly extracting Elián, and he was whisked away to, at that point, Watson Island, choppered over to Homestead Air Force Base, where he was checked out by a doctor to make sure that he was medically sound from just the rigors of being pulled out of the house and rushed into a van. Checked out there, flown to Andrews Air Force Base, where he was then reunited with his father, his half-brother, his stepmother, and we were told that that is where they are at this point and could possibly be for a couple of days.
Yeah, there appears to have been some concern that if they went back to the home in Bethesda, because that is the property of the Cuban government, they would in essence be on Cuban territory. And of course, the Court of Appeals has ruled that Elián cannot be taken out of the country until the appeals process is exhausted. So that would create a possible problem in the near future. And apparently that is why, at least for the next couple of days, they will be staying at Andrews and then will be taken to an undisclosed location. It does appear that the government is doing everything it can to keep this a private moment between Elián and his father and stepbrother.
Gregory Craig would not risk stepping on that landmine. He is the attorney who represented Bill Clinton through a lot of the impeachment proceedings, and is a smart lawyer. Regardless how you feel about the sides he takes, you can't deny that he's one of the sharpest attorneys in the United States. And just to reference the pictures on your screen right now, lower left right now is what's happening at Little Havana, and occasionally you'll see an intersection pop in there. That would be the picture outside Andrews Air Force Base, where Juan Miguel González is with Elián and the rest of his family. And of course the big picture to the right is the van with the Miami family now trying to seek a meeting with Juan Miguel in the Washington, D.C. area.
Yeah, in just a few hours, this family has gone from, we can't say a peaceful sleep because it does not appear from the accounts that we've been getting that anyone was truly asleep in the house, but they were negotiating. It appeared that there was no imminent danger of the federal government coming in. And all of a sudden, of course, everyone's lives changed. As a result, these people are now no longer in South Florida. They're in Washington, D.C., and so is Elián, but Elián is no longer with them. He is now with his father at Andrews Air Force Base.
Let's go ahead and bring Jack Hambrick back in. He's joining us from Andrews Air Force Base once again. Jack, tell us about the crowd out there, because you've got some protesters.
Yeah, Steve, the crowd has been building out here since we last talked to you about 20-30 minutes ago. And if we could pan over and look at some of the protesters that are building here. Once the news has gotten out throughout the afternoon that Elián and his father are here at Andrews Air Force Base, that has brought out a crowd. Many of these people, we've gone out and talked to them, are not Hispanic. They are not Cuban Americans. They are simply people that feel strongly about this issue on both sides. And there are a lot of people here that are upset that Elián was taken out of the home. They were disturbed by some of the pictures that they saw this morning, even though the family was given ample warning. The Miami family was given warning that this was going to happen, but nevertheless they were disturbed by certainly by some of the still photographs that we've been showing you throughout the day, and certainly by the video that we shot this morning of the raid. But the people here, the diversity of the crowd, it runs the gamut. A lot of these people are really blame the president, and they also blame Janet Reno too. We talked to a number of people who are calling for Reno's resignation, feeling that the action this morning was just a bit heavy-handed. And yet there are some other people that support Elián now being reunited with his family, even though what happened this morning perhaps was a little heavy-handed as well. But the crowd definitely building out here. And of course the interesting dynamic that will come into play as soon as the Miami family comes here is whether or not in the coming days Juan Miguel will actually want to meet with them. We have got no certain word on that. We've been told perhaps within a couple of days. You have to figure at this point they want Elián in a calm situation here in Andrews Air Force Base, away from the media, away from the cameras, away from everyone, where he can just kind of calm down, because as you know, this is has probably been a very traumatic day for a 6-year-old. We were given those still pictures, though, of from Greg Craig's office of the reunion, which showed Elián apparently very happy to be reunited with his father. You look at those pictures and he looks like a very happy boy, which is kind of surprising, I think, when you consider what he's been through today, being pulled out of the home this morning like he was, and certainly having been at that house for so long, standing, going out in front of the home with all of the people out there. So definitely the word we're getting is they want him to be in a calm environment and just kind of settle down for a little bit. We know that he did meet with some doctors down in Homestead before he left. We don't know whether or not he met with any doctors after he got here to Andrews Air Force Base. We do know that there were some officials from the Cuban interest section that arrived here at Andrews Air Force Base beforehand. We don't know what their involvement with the child has been since then, or if there have been any meetings, but we're told that the family right now is resting. Steve?
Jack, just your, I guess your gut feeling on all this. I mean, we saw this whole process take its ups and downs about will Elián be reunited with his family? Then it looked like he wouldn't. Then it looked like he would. And then we moved into the last 72 hours. And did you get the sense that the momentum was, in fact, going in that direction, that there would be a peaceful handover?
I think yesterday the feeling was that there was not going to be a peaceful handover. Certainly last night, when the negotiations seemed to be failing before midnight, when we knew that Janet Reno and the Justice Department was negotiating with the family, we got word that things weren't going well. Then, of course, this morning we woke up and we realized they didn't. And I think that once we saw Janet Reno yesterday afternoon announce that they would use law enforcement, I think that could have been considered a bad sign, because for the past 3 months she has been very patient. You can say she's been very patient in trying to negotiate the family. She even went down to Sister Jean O'Loughlin's home there in Miami Beach and tried to negotiate a transfer, a peaceful transfer. And that was very surprising for an attorney general to become so personally involved in a situation like this, and to actually fly down there personally and meet with these people. That does not happen very often. So and that could have been seen as perhaps because Janet Reno is from Miami and has a great deal of feeling for the community. But I think yesterday, once they said that law enforcement would be used, that was considered a pretty bad sign.
All right, Jack, thank you very much. CBS 4's Jack Hambrick joining us live from Washington, D.C., actually just outside Andrews Air Force Base, where Elián and Juan Miguel are currently residing, at least perhaps for the next couple of days.
This is Flagler and 34th Avenue, I believe. We're seeing a live picture. There appears to be an emergency vehicle in the middle of the road.
And I would guess that's the dumpster that had been burning that Gary Nelson had been telling us about.
It looks, other than that, it looks fairly quiet. The protests seem to have escalated for a while and then now has grown considerably quieter. You saw protests outside Andrews Air Force Base. When we were talking to Jack, there was a man dressed as the devil, if I saw correctly. And so you've seen the protests here, you've seen the protests in Washington, D.C., and now look at some of the protests in New York City, where Cuban Americans there have blocked the New Jersey tunnel. So this is by no means the only place where Cuban Americans are protesting.
This has the potential also, this location, of causing some severe traffic problems.
And do we have video also from protests in New Jersey, I believe?
It'll be 20 minutes.
Yeah, here we go. This is Union City, New Jersey. If you've ever been to Bergen Line Avenue, you know why this is called the second largest Cuban American community in exile. And again, there's what appears to be a peaceful protest, but also looks like they're blocking the street there.
Let's go back to CBS 4's Gary Nelson, who's been standing watch along Flagler, where the police have been doing little cat and mouse bouts with some of the protesters. Gary, give us an update.
Well, you know, the classic line from the old black and white movies, break it up, folks, move it along, there's nothing more to see here, go on home. That's kind of the mood that we're in now. There's very little activity in the area of 27th Avenue and Flagler Street, although just a few moments ago, some rescue and police went down the street in the area of 34th Avenue in Flagler, where a couple of people at least were treated and loaded into rescue. I can tell you that there was some rock and bottle throwing type activity reported down in that area a little earlier, and perhaps one or two people may have been hit by flying objects.
Gary, we're looking at some Chopper 4 video right now, and it looks like we've got something burning at an intersection and a busted fire hydrant across the street there.
Right, it might be a busted fire hydrant or perhaps one that someone's opened here. We've seen lots of these little fires being set through the day, folks piling debris in the middle of the road. A number of these fires have been with old tires, and boy, they really put out a big black, ominous looking plume, but they do very little damage.
And this is really too bad, because we have heard from Mayor Carollo early this morning. He was out on the scene within minutes after Elián was taken away. I remember seeing him with what appeared to be tears in his eyes, telling people very emphatically that whatever they felt in their heart, they had to use their brains. He was calling for calm. Mayor Pinellas, in turn, has done the same. I have been witness to the Cuban radio stations who were calling for calm, who are telling people not to do this kind of thing, because the bottom line is, who are you getting back at with doing this? And the bottom line, again, is that this just creates a bad image, not only for the Cuban American community, but for Miami in general, and we certainly don't need that.
Elián, I can tell you that the garbage trucks have moved in within the last 30, 45 minutes. Tony can probably see them from up in the air. Elián González here on the ground can zoom past me and show you from our ground level camera that the garbage trucks are in the street down there. The sanitation folks have moved in to clean up the debris that's left over from the bonfires that have been set. We saw a street cleaner come through just a little while ago, literally a mop-up operation. So the intensity of protest, the degree of the expressions of outrage that we had seen earlier in the day have certainly subsided at this point to some very considerable degree. If you're just joining us, I can tell you that earlier this morning, in the hours immediately following the seizure of Elián González from his South Florida family's home, There were some acts of violence out here in the streets, rock and bottle throwing going on. Some motorists who were caught up in demonstrators blocking intersections had their windshields broken, their windows broken as they were set upon by angry crowds. Bonfires were set in the middle of the streets. That predominantly ended many hours ago and came to a screeching halt when before noon Miami-Dade
tonight is operating as the temporary home of Juan Miguel Gonzalez and his son, his younger son, Elián's half-brother, and his stepmother. They are all together tonight, but for how long? Correspondent Andrea Mitchell with us tonight from our Washington Bureau. Andrea, how long could this go on in that location and at this status?
This could go on for days, if not weeks, if they are comfortable there, if it turns out that that is a secure location where outsiders, including the Miami family and members of the news media, cannot bother them. If they're comfortable there, as I say, they could stay for an extended period. There's talk of other locations, such as the Y Plantation, where the Middle East peace talks were conducted in the fall of 1998. But so far, it seems that it is a good environment for them. They've got a lot of resting to do, a lot of quiet time is necessary, reconnecting, and I think they want to take it one step at a time.
Andrea, is this akin to the political version of an iceberg? 2/3 of it is happening below the surface?
Oh, I think so. I mean, all of the psychologists on both sides have said that this child has not had a chance to mourn the death of his mother. He was rescued on Thanksgiving Day, think about it, 5 months ago, and immediately thrust into the situation where he was staying with these new relatives who had not known him before but had given him all of this care. But then we saw what happened in the ensuing weeks when he was showered with toys and gifts and went to Disney World and Universal City, the parades, El Duque. I mean, just think about this kind of fantasy life for the child. It was extraordinarily generous on the part of the Miami community, but it still meant that he had not had the peace and quiet, nor the connection with family members who were part of his original world for 5.5, 6 years, who could talk about the mother, Elizabeth, and what he had gone through in the ocean, in the sea, in the Florida Straits. So there's a lot of healing that needs to be done, and as you know from Havana, from the reports down there, there is a great interest in sending the pediatrician, the teacher, and some of the classmates very quickly.
Now, Andrea, the next legal move is what?
Well, on Monday, Greg Craig, on behalf of Juan Miguel Gonzalez, will file a motion to join the government's appeal with the 11th Circuit in Atlanta. And they will then have more filings from the Miami relatives. Oral arguments are scheduled at this point, unless they are expedited even further, on May 11th. This is a quick schedule for the appeals court, even though it may seem like an interminable amount of time to Juan Miguel Gonzalez and to the Miami relatives. In any case, they would be arguments on the 11th. The judges can do almost anything they want. They took a lot of time with the initial injunction request, and if they proceed and say that the Miami relatives were entitled to have Elián González have an asylum hearing, we could begin for a very extended period of time here in the United States.
All right, Andrea Mitchell with the very latest for us tonight after a long day on this story from our Washington Bureau. Andrea, thank you for that. We are joined by a man who has had an extraordinary day unfold in front of him, the mayor of Miami, Joseph Carollo. Mr. Mayor, good evening to you.
Hello.
Why don't you put this day in perspective vis-a-vis your service on the job thus far, vis-a-vis the history of your city?
Well, I won't hold any punches back from you. I see this day as one of the darkest, blackest most shameful moments ever where our federal government has taken action. There was no need whatsoever to have federal agents come into a house that had no weapons, men, women, other children, peaceful, loving, patriotic Americans, agents that came in with MP5 submachine guns that had clips of 32 rounds, some had the double clips, a total of 64 rounds and one in the chamber. And you know, the talk that the finger was down on the trigger, let me tell you why the finger was down on the trigger so that you could really understand why. SWAT teams are trained never to put the finger on the trigger unless they're ready to fire. For the simple reason that when they come in so close that they could bump to each other, they could bump into the wall and fire accidentally. They keep it away from the trigger because they could put the finger in the trigger in fractions of a second. So the stuff that the finger was not in the trigger just doesn't hold any water. In fact, for our Attorney General to have said 3 hours after the raid in a press conference that she still did not know at the time if there were in fact weapons in the house or not, was just an outright lie. For the simple reason that how could our Attorney General that was being informed almost minute by minute as to what happened tell the American people 3 hours later that she didn't know if there were weapons in the house, when obviously she knew very well that there were no weapons in that house. And this is part of the campaign to put doubt in the minds of the American people on this decent, humble, patriotic family, and on the city of Miami, and particularly the Cuban Americans population in the city of Miami.
Mr. Mayor, we don't have a representative of the other side with us, so I'm going to have to play devil's advocate. This simple, decent, humble, patriotic family you mentioned had a chance to cooperate in this case, and the feds say, look, they had more than an ample opportunity. Our hand was forced. Where were they when we asked politely to hand over that child?
Well, look, let's be very honest. They kept compelling this family, but they would not compel the Cuban government, whom they were dealing with, not Juan Miguel. All the stuff that the family kept putting the goalposts back more and more, that's just a lot of hogwash. The family kept this original position from day one, not all this other stuff that are being said now. Even yesterday morning, I even received a call, an unexpected phone call from the Reverend Jesse Jackson, who told me that he was totally against armed federal agents coming into that house. He felt that that was wrong and negotiations had to be kept. He told me that he had called the Attorney General after he had originally called me to express to her that his feelings that that was wrong, and to suggest to her that what she and I had talked about, that we needed to speak in that. In fact, you had family attorneys, some of the most outstanding, respectable pillars of our community that were in that house when the federal marshals and immigration officials came, that were still negotiating with the federal government, or at least they thought they were negotiating. The federal government knew that they were never serious in those negotiations. All that was ever heard from our government was the boys got to be turned fully to Juan Miguel, meaning the Cuban interest section, now. If they truly wanted to take this boy away, no matter what, because of the concern of the threats from Fidel Castro, they could have done this in another way where this boy would not have had the traumatic impact that he did.
Major story. We begin where it started early this morning in Little Havana. CBS 4's Lisette Campos. Lisette.
And it was a moment that many thought would never happen, and yet at 5:15 this morning it did. News cameras had been lined up outside of this house for 24 hours a day, but when photographers heard screaming and they saw officers firing pepper spray into the crowd, they knew it was time. Just after 5 a.m., the white van screeched to a halt outside the home of 6-year-old Elián González, and in an instant, federal agents in full riot gear forced the front door open. It was the moment many had feared. Federal marshals had come for Elián.
We were negotiating on the phone with them, on hold, and they broke through my window and put a gun through Elián's head. To Elián's head, who saw the tragedy of his mom's death.
The marshal's first stop was Elián's bed, but the 6-year-old boy was hiding in a closet, holding tight to Donato Dalrymple, the man who fished him out of the sea on Thanksgiving Day. Associate press photographer Alan Diaz was in the room with Elián and snapped this picture just seconds before agents kicked the door in. Elián was in a panic, hearing the agents getting closer and closer.
The kid's crying, and the kid looks at me and he asks me, "What's happening?" And I say, what am I going to say? I said, "Nothing's happening, don't worry." He says, "¿Qué está pasando?"
What's happening?
That's right, and I answered, "Nada, papito."
And then the face-to-face encounter. The agent, his rifle, Elián and Donato. A moment captured on film.
And they came in with guns. Now, I don't say they were put on my brain, but the gun was pointed right to me. "Give me the boy, give me the boy." And there was a lady with a blanket, and she took it and she put it over his face.
Elián's cousin Maris Laces and her father Lazaro were overcome with sadness and shock. Within 3 minutes, the military-style operation was over inside the house. But outside, the panic was just beginning.
He was holding the woman like for salvation or something, and you could see in his face how scared he was. He's 6 years old. I mean, everybody here was scared. I can't imagine what was going through his head.
CBS 4 photojournalist Jose Guzman captured Elián's last seconds in Little Havana, the crowd around him in a panic, choking and straining to see through the gas. Now, Elián's next stop from here was Watson Island. CBS 4 capturing the exclusive images of the helicopter flying from Watson Island to the Homestead Air Reserve Base. At that base, he was examined by a medical doctor, and from there, the little boy was placed on a plane and flown to Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland, where his father, Juan Miguel González, was waiting for the reunion he had been hoping for almost 5 months. Live in Little Havana, I'm Lizette Campos, CBS 4 News Tonight.
The Miami relatives followed Elián to Washington today, but instead of getting a family reunion, they returned away from Andrews Air Force Base. Juan Miguel González has said he won't even consider meeting with the family for at least another 2 days. CBS 4 News is the only station with pictures on the plane with the Miami relatives during their desperate flight. Lazaro, Maris Laces, Delphine, and Donato Dalrymple took off from for Washington, that is, with just the clothes on their backs. CBS 4 team coverage continues now with Jack Hambrick live at Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland. Jack.
Angela, I think it's safe to say that no one could have predicted all that we have seen today, both in Miami and here in Washington. The protesters that were outside of the Air Force Base earlier today are now gone. Juan Miguel and Elián are tucked away inside of the Air Force Base tonight, and so far they have shown no interest in talking with the Miami family. The Miami family arrives in Washington and tries to enter Andrews Air Force Base. After several minutes pass, Lazaro, Maris Laces, and Delphine González are turned away. Not even the presence of Senator Bob Smith holds any sway with the MPs. The Miami family is demanding to see Elián, but at this point, Juan Miguel has no interest in seeing the Miami relatives. The Miami family attempts to hold a press conference but backs off, citing the crush of media and supporters. Odd, considering both have been camped outside of their Miami home for months. Juan Miguel arrived at Andrews Air Force Base this morning, shortly before Elián's plane touched down. These pictures of the reunion were taken shortly afterward, showing a smiling 6-year-old with his stepmother, stepbrother, and father.
In an effort to avoid the need for the use of force, we worked through the night trying to reach a mutually acceptable agreement that would accomplish the orderly return of Elián González to his father, Juan Miguel. The Attorney General was tireless. She was insistent that we continue our effort to achieve a peaceful and voluntary transfer of custody.
I'm appalled at what went on here this morning. I just couldn't believe it when I woke up at 5:30 and I saw INS agents charging into a home with unarmed people and an innocent 6-year-old child with a gun in his face.
They're voicing their opinion, I'm voicing mine. So I just wanted to let the president know that there are some people that are behind him.
Unlike Little Havana, protesters on both sides stand side by side outside of the base. Yes, there are heated exchanges, but both sides tolerate each other here.
Why didn't they turn them over?
The court didn't decide that.
You allowed the court in Miami.
Did you read the decision? Did you read the decision?
The court in Miami said that those people were not the legal guardian of that boy.
Now, there are some people that are questioning the photograph that was released by Attorney Greg Craig's office. We have two photographs, one taken of Elián in Miami a couple of days ago, and the other one released by Greg Craig, reportedly taken after the reunion here at Andrews Air Force Base this afternoon. Some people say there was a difference in Elián's hair, that perhaps the photo that was released today was perhaps manipulated, or maybe even an older photograph. So some people not believing that the photograph was actually taken today when the Juan Miguel was reunited with his father. I will tell you, though, that Greg Craig's office here in Washington did tell us that the film was actually taken to a Ritz photo, 1 hour photo here in Washington, and developed. But as I mentioned, some people just don't believe that that photograph is real. We're live at Andrews Air Force Base. Jack Hambrick, CBS 4 News.
The picture will be scrutinized. Thank you, Jack. Let's go now to CBS 4's Michelle Gillen.
Our live team coverage continues from Washington with more on the Miami relatives. Michelle.
Well, I think most observers would agree that this has been essentially a devastating day for the González family. At this hour, they are retiring to their hotel rooms here in the nation's capital, and they're particularly upset, as they put it, over a turn late today in some developments. According to Roger Bernstein, who is one of their attorneys, the attorney who accompanied them on the flight from Miami to Washington, D.C., when they arrived here, as you know, they met with Senator Bob Smith. According to Bernstein, the senator put out calls to Attorney General Janet Reno, attempting to get some communication going, some contact, some update on the child, and some discussion on the possibility of having a meeting at Andrews Air Force Base. According to Bernstein, Senator Smith never received a call back from the Attorney General or anyone from her staff. But indeed, he claims that they did receive the call back from Gregory Craig, who you know is Juan Miguel's attorney. And according to Bernstein, Craig said, "Call me back on Tuesday during business hours." Needless to say, this is not the way the González family hoped to wrap up this first evening in Washington, D.C.
The flight carrying the González family landed in the nation's capital just before 4 p.m. under cold gray skies. As we documented with our cameras on the flight, family members Lázaro González, his brother Dolphine, Elián's cousin Maris Lasis, and one of the fishermen who brought Elián to shore held on to hope they might establish some contact or communication with the child, with his father Juan Miguel, and Attorney General Janet Reno. They also held on to what's now a haunting portrait seen around the world and replayed in their mind time and time again. And a document they say they faxed to the Justice Department yesterday afternoon outlining so-called negotiated details for a possible joint custody pending next month's hearing. Negotiations they say they believed were in good faith. After disembarking from the flight and meeting with U.S. Senator Bob Smith, they headed to Andrews Air Force Base to be turned away and prepare at this hour for a press conference now set for Easter Sunday, and possibly a few hours' sleep for the first night in many months without Elián at their side.
And of course, the focus for many of the lawyers this evening is on what impact the transfer of the child might have on the upcoming hearing. But I think it's clear to say for the González family, their focus this evening is just on the question, will they ever see that child again? I do want to mention, we've got the headlines here for you. The Washington Post already out. Raid reunites Elián and father. With the photo that, of course, is familiar, and particularly in the Washington Post, the Elián operation, an editorial that appears to be quite favorable to it. Of course, this is a story that reads and plays very differently outside the South Florida area, as many of you know. We'll have more on that, following up on it for you tomorrow, and we'll be at that press conference tomorrow morning. Michelle Gillen reporting live from the nation's capital. Back to you.
Thank you, Michelle. The fallout after the INS seizing Elián continues tonight in Miami. Police remain on full alert tonight as hundreds of people take to the streets in protest. Officers in full riot gear were forced to use tear gas to disperse some of the crowds and making dozens of arrests. CBS 4's Lisa Cabrera joins us now with more on that part of the story. Lisa.
Steve, we have had moments of absolute chaos in Little Havana. Miami police clashing with protesters who have been very emotional over the course of tonight. We have seen fires in the streets in Little Havana. Officers forced to use pepper spray to disperse unruly crowds here. Just a tumultuous night in South Florida. Miami police clash violently with demonstrators. Officers aggressively taking down whomever they consider a potential threat. Watch one woman trying desperately to help her husband. Emotions run high, fires burning in the streets of Little Havana. Traffic barely moves as horns are blaring. Police armed with pepper spray wearing protective gas masks. Demonstrators are subdued, dozens arrested. Officers give chase to an unidentified man who shouts obscenities at them. He is apprehended and handcuffed on the ground. And some incredible images captured throughout the course of tonight. Demonstrations started earlier this morning, within hours after Elián was removed from his home. Gary Nelson has more on that.
Dawn arrived loudly in Little Havana. Demonstrators taking to the streets, blocking the streets. These images prompted by this image. Little Havana's adopted son seized in the night.
I am an American citizen, daughter of a Cuban. I am so ashamed of this nation. I don't want to be called an American. This child was ripped from his loving house.
Someone flew an American flag upside down, a distress symbol. An old woman cried out in pain from the sidewalk while others blocked the street. Mass transit wasn't transiting anyone. This little boy's daddy was not happy to be caught up in it.
I'm trying to get home to go to my work. I'm gonna lose my job if I don't get there on time. It's not my fault, Mom. I gotta go to my work. Look at this kid. This is my boy, my son.
This daddy dropped to his knees and sobbed. His little boy hugged his neck and cried out too. This young woman cried out, maced in the face by a policeman, she says, as she stood on the sidewalk. Arrests set in, police taking away men, women, old men. At some point, chaos and outrage gave way to outrageous behavior. This van was set upon, windows broken out, a police car surrounded, rocks and bottles thrown. A fire was set, then another, and another. A dumpster dumped over, and cops cracked down. The sound of hissing tear gas canisters filled Little Havana. Acrid gases sent crowds scattering. Now playing at the Dade County Auditorium, a cloud of tear gas. Some took refuge in a Walgreens store. A little boy gets his eyes flushed out. The arrests now came in mass. Police taking, giving no quarter. No one, once told to move, was exempt.
The gentleman lying on the ground was taken down with prejudice just a moment ago by Miami police. He is a television news photographer.
Gary Nelson, CBS 4 News Tonight.
And there were so many arrests made throughout the course of today, made throughout the course of tonight, that Miami police had to go and get extra long paddy wagons, bring them back to Little Havana as they continue to make arrests and take people away from the areas that seem to have the biggest crowds. In case there are continued disturbances throughout tonight until tomorrow, Broward County Sheriff's officers have been put on alert. They are standing by in Broward County in case authorities in Miami may need assistance. They will be deployed to the South Florida area, to Miami-Dade County, to assist Miami police. About 5 or 10 minutes ago, Miami police had much of Flagler Street blocked off here at Southwest 1st Avenue and Southwest 17th Avenue. They have just since moved on, but the demonstrators continue to drive by here, blaring horns and waving flags. Miami police say, however, that the situation at this point is under control. We're live in Little Havana. Lisa Cabrera, CBS 4 News Tonight.
Because of the protests, there are several places you should try to avoid this Saturday night. Flagler Street from 17th to 32nd Avenues is shut down. 27th Avenue from Flagler to Southwest 8th Streets is also closed. And the ramp on eastbound 836 to 27th Avenue is also shut down to traffic. President Clinton and Janet Reno were both quick to speak out after the pre-dawn raid. Let's listen to what they had to say.
Up until the last, we tried every way we could to encourage Lázaro González to voluntarily hand over the child to his father. Unfortunately, the Miami relatives rejected our efforts, leaving us no other option but the enforcement action.
I am well aware that this has been a difficult time for all the parties involved. But let's remember, as I said from the outset, the most important thing was to treat this in a lawful manner according to the established process. This was in the end about a little boy who lost his mother and has not seen his father in more than 5 months. I hope with time and support, Elián and his father will have the opportunity to be a strong family again.
And here are the results of our exclusive CBS 4 News telepoll. We asked if you approve of the government using force to reunite Elián with his father. Over 2,576, or 62% of you, approve of the INS raid on the Little Havana home, while 1,592, or 38% of you, disapprove of the INS action. Coming up a little later on this special edition of CBS 4 News Tonight, we'll have email reactions to today's reunion between Elián and his father.
Still ahead on this special edition of CBS 4 News at 11, after weeks of chaos on the street where Elián was living, it is a different scene tonight thanks to a dramatic police action.
We're also getting a look inside the home just after the raid. Marislesis González gives us the blow-by-blow as it happened.
And live pictures right now from Chopper 4 from Hialeah as you look down on some of the protesters out expressing their disapproval of what happened today with Elián. And the number, by the way, on the bottom of your screen is Rumor Control Hotline 305-579-1800. And that number for any kind of information you need on street closings and any kind of police action, anything you want to know, call that number.
There's much more still ahead in this special edition of CBS 4 News at 11, Elián seized.
The Pontiac and GMC bonus drive is on. Drive in now and
and to his Miami relatives, the question is larger than how does he look on film.
Easter morning in the nation's capital, and on this particularly cold spring day, the González family, the branch that cared for Elián these past 5 months, found themselves on Capitol Hill, anguished, fighting headlines and bad press, and all the while appealing for help in their trying to find out if indeed the boy is safe and might ever be allowed to see them again. Lázaro González.
We want all of you to please cooperate on behalf of this child. And find out why. They don't allow us or you to see the child.
Today's press conference was called by U.S. Senator Bob Smith of New Hampshire, who says he came to tell America he is outraged and wants answers.
When is the last time in America that a child was taken at gunpoint and custody transferred without the order of any judge of any court in this land? When?
At issue today, the execution of yesterday's raid.
I call on the United States Congress to convene a formal investigation on the practices the Department of Justice has used in exploiting this family and treating them as criminals.
But amid the politics, it all came down to one immediate request and concern. Can this family see Elián? Marislesis González.
And I demand to see Elián, and I would not leave until I see this boy.
Then she may well be in Washington for quite some time. Today, the family, with Senator Smith, headed back to Andrews Air Force Base to attempt to make contact with Elián's father or a representative, where they again were turned away.
He needs privacy, the family needs space, and I hope the cameras will respect their desire to be alone and away from the turmoil that has afflicted this child's life over the last 4 or 5 months.
Indeed, according to my conversation with Senator Smith, he says Craig told him that Juan Miguel has no intention of seeing any members of the Miami family anytime in the near future.
And late reaction from the family regarding the release of those new photos? Well, they say if the child is so happy and safe, then let someone, anyone from outside the compound, come in and visit him in person. Michelle Gillen, CBS 4 News, Tonight.
For a second night, protesters are taking to the streets to express their anger over the seizure of Elián González.
But unlike yesterday, these demonstrations have not been violent. CBS 4's Ken Rosado is live on the scene of one rally on Bird Road and Southwest 87th in Westchester. Ken.
That's right, Steve and Angela. This one pretty big. Let's just take a look if we could. Maddie, if you could just get a shot of everybody here along the street. This one goes a good 8 blocks, 4 blocks on either side of 87th Avenue along Bird Road. I'm estimating between 500 and 800 people. It's hard to say exactly. But things seem to be pretty peaceful at this point. Police tell me there have been no arrests yet. Everybody's staying along the sidewalk. The only problem is, of course, the traffic being caused by people driving slowly along this area. You'll see some of the Miami-Dade Police Department in force. There are at least 15 to 20 police cars, some paddy wagons, some vans that are standing by in case there's any kind of violence or any problems or any need for arrest. This area not that far from Miami-Dade Police headquarters, but like I said, just a precaution. Police are telling me that right now there have been no incidents, no arrests, no violence, and things are proceeding pretty peacefully. It seems by the look of the crowd, many of the people are fairly young. Let's listen to some of the things that 2 of the protesters had to say moments ago.
I am 74 years old and I'm here because I had to come here. I am sick, but anyway, you know, I see it because I got stand a long time, but I feel very strong about this demonstration.
And I said, you know, let's get down. I feel like venting it out. I'm dressed in black today because this is a mourning period for me. All that keeps going through my mind is, where's Elián? And why can't the press see him? Not a picture that the attorney of Juan Miguel shows us.
Now, that woman you just heard speaking, Teresa Benitez, was actually one of the women that was at the house yesterday morning when the raid occurred. She said she was pushed down by the agents that were making the raid on the house. She has some bruises on her arm as she hit the ground. She said that she couldn't believe it as she saw the vans coming in, and that's why she felt compelled to be here tonight to voice her outrage at what she claims was an unfair act by the U.S. government. So once again, if you're intending on heading toward this area, Westchester, Southwest 40th Street, Bird Road, avoid this area along the intersection of 87th Avenue. This is going to be a pretty big mess for quite some time. But like we said, no arrests, no major incidents thus far. We're live in Westchester. Ken Rosado, CBS 4 News Tonight.
Until tonight's demonstration this Easter Sunday was pretty quiet. Nothing like the anger on the street yesterday when protesters set dumpsters on fire and clashed with police. The spark was the raid by federal agents who seized Elián from his home in Little Havana just before dawn Saturday. Tonight the question is, what lies ahead for many in the exile community who feel betrayed by the system? CBS 4's Stacey Santos is live in Little Havana with that story. Stacey.
Steve, the crowd here on this Easter Sunday, much smaller than we've seen. A different story than what's over where Ken is. It is calm, it is quiet here. Fewer flags are raised high, fewer signs. But make no mistake about it, there is still plenty of anger.
America is being dead.
The few that paid a visit to Elián's Miami family's home laid Easter baskets in front or came to express their unhappiness with the U.S. government's early morning raid on Saturday.
We expect to have a stoppage at the city on Tuesday.
Organizers from the Cuban exile community are talking about their plans to strike peacefully in Miami on Tuesday.
Closing down their businesses, sitting in front of the businesses if they want, or sitting at home, people not going to work, refraining from doing the activities that you typically do in any business day.
If it comes together, it would be the first organized protest since Elián was seized. There is also the slim possibility of a mass demonstration on Wednesday.
We are concerned now that the government,
the exile community.
As for Assistant Chief Brooks being in uniform in the lead van, he says it was so that as the convoy reached the Miami police barricade, officers would not try to stop the feds from passing.
Their whole mission is based on speed and surprise. They would have been saying, move, I said, move that barricade, we're federal officers. I need some identification. Guns would have been drawn, and almost certainly there would have been an exchange of firearms.
Anyone in law enforcement can tell you that in order for the officers in that perimeter to have known that these were indeed federal agents, we could have done it without putting a fully uniformed assistant police chief, dressed as a peacock, in the van, the very same van where young Elián was being taken to.
Then there's the issue of the police department's actions following the raid. Some exile leaders contend the officers were too hard-nosed and used excessive force. O'Brien disagrees. Simply put, O'Brien says he has comfort in knowing that he fulfilled his legal responsibilities and duties.
There's no option. It's not as though I could say, well, maybe I'm going to do this or not do this. That's not an option. As a law enforcement officer, I had no choice in the path that I took.
All right, now Carollo says what bothers him most at this point is that the chief has not even given him a phone call, the respect of a phone call to talk to him since all this happened.
The time now is 8:20, and there's much more ahead on Today in Florida at 8. Bullets fly at a popular zoo. Children becoming both.
That's right, Jennifer. We have just learned from Senator Trent Lott's office that Senate hearings into the INS action at the Miami home will begin sometime next week. That obviously is going to make a lot of Republican leaders happy, Republicans that have been very upset over the INS action. We have also learned that the Miami family has filed another motion in federal court, this time to try and force Juan Miguel into a meeting. In the meantime, Juan Miguel, Elián, and the rest of the family have moved off of Andrews Air Force Base and are now staying at the Y River Plantation in Maryland. This morning, the Miami family arrived at Andrews Air Force Base to make yet another attempt to see Elián. Shortly after these pictures were taken, however, Elián and his family were secretly moved from the base by U.S. Marshals.
The family is moving to an undisclosed location domestically. The Marshal Service will continue its protective detail on Juan Miguel González and Elián.
And I think at least for the next several days, the less we all say about it, and the more time he has to breathe the air of a normal life, the better.
In the meantime, the State Department is expected to issue visas for several of Elián's classmates and relatives. They are expected to remain in the U.S. during the appeals process. None of this is good news for the Miami family. At this point, there is no indication that they will have any reunion with Elián or Juan Miguel anytime soon. Attorney General Janet Reno arrives on Capitol Hill to explain the armed removal of Elián from the Miami home. Many Republican leaders are calling for a Senate investigation, calling Reno's actions an abuse of power.
The issue is whether we as a society, as a government, as a country, should authorize the use of force to go into a family home to settle an issue about custody.
It was getting worse. The vigils going around the clock, this child being kept out of school, held up for a public display, that it was a collapsing situation and no closer to a resolution.
Juan Miguel's attorney, Greg Craig, may try to make Elián's appeal for asylum moot. Craig wants to replace Lázaro González's name on the appeal with Juan Miguel's. If that happens, it is unlikely that Elián's father would pursue asylum. And right now, as we speak, the Miami family is up on Capitol Hill meeting with more Republican leaders trying to garner some support. And we have also just learned from the spokesperson at the Y River Plantation that that is going to be home for Juan Miguel and Elián and the rest of the family. That is where they will remain throughout the appeals process. We're live in Washington, D.C. Jack Hambrick, CBS 4 News.
A lot of spectators slowing on the 836 because of a message about Elián. Drivers going east were noticing a small boat on the lake near Miami International Airport and a sign that read, "Bill, more cigars on the way as promised. Say hi to Monica. Fidel." No word on who's responsible. Our special team coverage on this story will continue over the next 90 minutes. At 5:30, a closer look at businesses in Cuban communities that stayed open today. Then at 6 o'clock, we'll continue our week-long look at the efforts to heal the community. Tonight, the rift between South Florida's Cuban-American community and the rest of the nation. We'll also tell you about another vigil tonight on Miami Beach.
A young burglar back in a South Florida courtroom today for a shot at freedom, but that shot has been postponed because his psychiatrist did not show up for today's hearing. 15-year-old Richard Bartlett is accused of 35 burglaries and setting 2 fires when he was only 13 years old.
One of his victims says he can only hope the boy is ready to rejoin the community.
I hope that he is healthy and won't be returning back to his previous life of crime. But if he does, it's going to be bad for him and the society in general.
Bartlett's lawyer is asking the court for permission for him to leave the juvenile facility on day passes, but the judge refused to hear the case because his psychiatrist did not attend today's hearing. That psychiatrist is now being subpoenaed to testify next week. Chopper 4 over a freak accident involving a North Miami police officer. The officer was driving on Northwest 1st Avenue near 125th Street when a light pole crashed right down on top of the cruiser. Investigators are trying to figure out why the pole fell. The officer was not hurt.
Look for plenty of playoff heat inside the American Airlines Arena tonight. The Miami Heat is looking to make it 2 in a row against Detroit, but the Pistons won't make it easy. CBS 4 Sports Director Jim Berry is joining us live at the AAA with a preview of tonight's playoff game. Jim.
All right, guys, well, the Heat's attitude tonight is why change? They took Game 1 pretty easily. In Game 2, they can bury the Pistons and really take command of this first-round series. The Heat wants to keep the same formula. They want another steady effort from Anthony Carter, who filled in well Saturday for the injured Tim Hardaway. Pat Riley wants Jamal Mashburn to hoist another 20 shots, his 29 points in Game 1, a playoff best. As for Detroit, well, Grant Hill says his tender ankle is better and that he expects to be more himself tonight than he was in Game 1. For the Heat, they say holding serve is vital.
Everybody knows, what the situation is and what we have to do tonight. We got to win Game 2, and it's pretty much a must-win for us to come out and get this done so we can go to Detroit up 2-0.
And, of course, tough defense will always be important for the Heat, which brings us to our guest, guard Bruce Bowen, a welcome re-addition to the team. How tough is it for you to get your motor going after 3 days rest?
It's not tough at all. You got the time to get your body back right, so it's about going out here and performing tonight.
Your main job playing defense, you're drawing 2 tough assignments, Jerry Stackhouse and Grant Hill. How do you slow those guys down?
We just try to make their shots as difficult as possible. They're great scorers in their own right. Both of them all-stars, so it's no way of saying that I'm going to shut this guy down. I just try to make things as difficult as possible.
You really appreciate the second chance, don't you?
Oh, who doesn't appreciate a second chance?
A lot going on here in town with the work stoppage today. Are you guys kind of distracted by what's going on politically, or are you focused on this game?
Actually, no. I think it's the same attitude as far as, we have to play hard tonight, and it's important for us to play hard and get a victory tonight.
All right, Bruce, good luck.
Appreciate it.
All right, Bruce Bowen from the Miami Heat joining us. The Heat hoping to go up 2 games to none against the Detroit Pistons. I'll be back at 6 with more on the Heat, plus more on the Marlin players who stayed away from the park today, supporting the Elián González work stoppage. Live from American Airlines Arena, I'm Jim Berry, CBS 4 Sports.
Police think they know who's responsible for the shootings at Washington's National Zoo.
Coming up next, the search for the suspect and surprising news about the young boy who was thought to be brain dead.
It's the first of its kind in the nation. Gay marriages get the go-ahead in one state, and the governor there is expected to make the new measure official in a few days.
A frightening study why black babies are more likely than white babies to die from sudden infant death syndrome.
The wild ride continues on Wall Street. We'll tell you if tech stock investors recovered any of their losses yesterday.
Meteorologist Bob Soper, CBS 4 Weather Control. We continue to watch a cold front making its way right now near Lake Okeechobee, but as you can see, underneath that front and along with it, hardly any rainfall at all. We still have a chance of a shower or two, and I'll tell you more about the forecast for tomorrow and days ahead in just a few minutes.
You're watching CBS 4 News with Angela Ray, Steve Wolford, Jim Berry Sports, meteorologist Bob Soper, and storm specialist Brian Norcross.
Americans are turning to CBS like never before for shows that are moving, original, real, and inspired, including the most watched new drama of the year, Judging Amy.
Oh, hell.
Viewers call Judging Amy's characters tenderly human.
You're a mother. How can you deny that? I'm a mother. You're lucky I have to be objective.
It's writing, intelligent, and moving.
Got my good days and my bad days.
You're not the only one with pressure.
You're right.
Amy Brenneman and Tyne Daly star in Judging Amy, CBS Tonight.
From its debut in 1974 as Broward County's open heart surgery pioneer to its role today as a leader in cardiac care, the Heart Institute of Florida at Florida Medical Center continues its excellence in cardiac services. Board-certified affiliated cardiologists, surgeons, and their patients have come to rely on the hospital for its variety of advanced services and dedicated staff. The Heart Institute of Florida at Florida Medical Center. Comprehensive cardiac services backed by more than 25 years of quality and service. Call 1-888-TEN-IT-FOR-YOU.
I don't want to set the world
I just want to start a flame.
The Marshal Service will continue its protective detail on Juan Miguel Gonzalez and Elián.
Just hours before the announcement, the Miami family attempted one last visit to the base. Apprehensive, Elián would be moved again, even into deeper seclusion. And again, the family was turned away.
We cannot see our cousin in there. He is arrested. I don't know what is the problem, but we haven't been able to see him. We haven't been able to talk to him, and it's just very frustrating.
Meanwhile, details were revealed today on how Elián's father had, according to U.S. Senator Bob Smith, signed off on the armed siege.
I heard words to this effect, paraphrasing, that the father had faith and confidence that the Justice Department would conduct the raid without harming their son, his son. So he basically approved of it.
At the same time, Senator Bob Graham and Connie Mack demanded an investigation into the raid and answers as to why the family is not being allowed to see the child.
I am going to recommend to the majority leader that the Senate engage in a hearing and/or hearings with respect to the use of force. Thank you, ma'am.
Meanwhile, President Clinton publicly praised Attorney General Janet Reno for her handling of Saturday's raid and reuniting the child with his father. While family members and some members of Congress are looking for answers as to what actually happened and why, President Clinton suggested enough has already been said.
The thing that really matters now is that little boy and his life and his family. And I think at least for the next several days, the less we all say about it, and the more time he has to breathe the air of a normal life, the better.
So, as we know, Elián moved today reportedly to the Aspen Institute on the Eastern Shore. We have learned that tomorrow he is expecting, or at least those with him are expecting, his school teacher who is allegedly arriving from Havana and also one of his cousins. We'll be getting more reaction from family members and members of Congress of what happened here today. For the 11 o'clock, I'll see you then. Michelle Gillen reporting live from Washington. Back to you.
The leader of a South Florida student group is organizing another protest over the Elián seizure, a caravan to the capital.
Not who you think. The Saturday morning raid. Janet Reno defends it on Capitol Hill. Cuban Americans protest it in Miami. The battle against a new kind of pension plan. And a ground war against a potential killer.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
And good evening. Dan is off tonight. I'm John Roberts. With no end in sight to the legal and political battles over Elián González, there was a change of venue today. The Cuban boy and his family were moved to a new home. For the child who has been through so much, it is his third home in just 4 days. To help Elián feel more comfortable, the State Department promised today to allow some of his friends from Cuba to come for a visit. Still not welcome, though, are the boy's Miami relatives, as Byron Pitts reports.
Nearly at the same moment that Elián González and his family were being secretly moved to a remote farmhouse on Maryland's Eastern Shore, his Miami relatives were being turned away by security guards at the front gate of Andrews Air Force Base.
We haven't been able to see him. We haven't been able to talk to him, and it's just very frustrating.
Elián and his family will live here at the Y River Plantation compound where the Middle East peace talks were held in 1998. It's about an hour's drive from Capitol Hill, where the Senate Majority Leader announced this afternoon Congress will begin formal hearings next week into Saturday's raid in Miami.
Why did you use this amount of force at this particular time? Why did it have to be done that day?
Republican lawmakers mostly believe the Attorney General used excessive force when INS agents removed Elián from Miami. Although a majority of Americans believe the raid was necessary, some in Congress feel that she should have negotiated with the boy's relatives longer. Congress could even call Juan Miguel González to testify. Democratic leaders say it's all unnecessary.
Yesterday, 5 kids were shot in this city. One of them's on life support right now. We can't get the juvenile justice bill on the floor of the United States Senate. And gun control. I think the American public might like to see us spend a few weeks trying to pass some legislation.
Janet Reno defended her decision during a 90-minute meeting with Republican and Democratic senators this morning. While she did not change a single mind on Capitol Hill, she did receive applause and an endorsement from her boss.
Now that they have been safely reunited, I believe it's time for all of us, including the media and those of us in public life, to give this family the space it needs to heal its wounds.
Tonight, CBS News has learned one of Elián's cousins and a school teacher will travel from Cuba tomorrow morning and join the boy in Maryland. Meantime, Elián's Miami relatives filed a motion in federal court late today requesting visitation rights. John?
Byron Pitts on Capitol Hill, thanks. In Miami's Little Havana, this was a day of protest against the forcible removal of Elián from his Miami relatives. CBS's Jeffrey Kaufman has that part of the story.
This was to be Ciudad Muerta, the day of the dead city. Which is why, before the sun rose, this Cuban restaurant that boasts it never closes made an exception. Cuban-American leaders declared a general strike in Miami, vowing to close down the city.
The businesses are closed today here.
Yes.
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
For Elián.
And apart from the honking horns of defiant exiles, it was quiet in Little Havana today.
This tells you how deep the sentiments are. This was a stoppage which was called without any type of coercion on the people.
That is the official line, but this shop, not owned by Cuban Americans, was one of a number we found that had been threatened.
Yeah, somebody called me yesterday saying, I think it's better for you not to open the store.
And far from being a dead city, it was life as usual in most of Miami. There is little sympathy for the exiles' cause beyond the exile community.
They have their own way of handling problems, and it's not necessarily, in my opinion, is the best way to handle a problem.
Elián is gone, but he won't be forgotten in this city for a long time.
In terms of its impact on Miami itself, I think that Elián González has been the single greatest destructive force on Miami since Hurricane Andrew.
The Elián saga showed that Cuban Americans can no longer count on support from Washington. The failure of this general strike shows they can't even count on support from their neighbors. Jeffrey Kaufman, CBS News, Miami.
Police in Washington, D.C. have made an arrest in connection with yesterday's shootings at the National Zoo. As CBS News White House correspondent Bill Plant reports, the incident has cranked up the volume in the gun control debate.
The fight between rival teens exploded into gunfire in the usually peaceable precincts of the National Zoo. It left 7 wounded and rekindled the president's push for new gun laws.
Our country still has too much violence and too much crime. It should be obvious to all of us that we can do more and we must do more.
Like many inner cities, parts of Washington, D.C. can be violent. And when gunfire erupts in the halls of the U.S. Capitol, as it did 2 summers ago, or at one of the city's most popular tourist destinations, it's hard for lawmakers to ignore the gun debate. But new gun control legislation remains stalled in Congress. A compromise bill would require child safety locks, ban the import of large ammo clips, prohibit minors from possessing assault weapons, and mandate a background check for firearms purchased at gun shows. But the debate over whether it's possible to reduce violence by reducing access to guns rages on.
There were 2 groups of youth who were scuffling, who were fighting, looks like throughout the afternoon. And as all too often happens, had ready access to guns, and the results speak for themselves.
We had an attack last week somewhere with butcher knives. So we're going to outlaw those, right? When you commit a crime with whatever instrument you use it, that's unacceptable, and you have to stop it any way you can.
The nation's capital already has strict gun control laws, and the gun used in the zoo shooting may have been illegal in any case. But every shooting incident like this just adds to the frustration on both sides, those who want new gun laws and those who want tougher enforcement. John?
Bill Plant at the White House, thanks. If there's an issue that excites even more passionate debate in this country than gun control, it's abortion. And as CBS's Jim Stewart reports, those passions were on full display today outside the U.S. Supreme Court.
For the first time in 8 years, the Supreme Court is revisiting a woman's right to an abortion.
From South Florida to Washington, D.C., we begin with CBS 4's Lisette Campos live in Little Havana. Lisette.
We are live on Northwest 29th Avenue and 7th Street. Traffic is flowing and there are no demonstrators on the street right now. A very different scene from this afternoon when police almost had a riot on their hands after a well-known South Florida attorney was arrested before hundreds of people.
They dragged me, okay? And some cop can stand in front of me and say, it's your attitude that got you here. Then you know what? Then they need an attitude adjustment. And you know, they picked on the wrong spick this time.
This is not the Grisel Ibarra viewers are used to. After years of watching her do interviews on radio and television about immigration issues, one of South Florida's best-known attorneys was thrown to the ground, pepper sprayed in the face, dragged through the street and arrested, all on live television. The images were captured on the Spanish-language cable station Telemiami. The station was holding a telethon to raise bail money for demonstrators arrested this weekend after the siege of Elián González. Attorney Ibarra, in the green dress, had been collecting money from passers-by for almost 2 hours.
A policeman came to me and said that as long as I kept the traffic flowing, what I was doing was okay.
But 15 minutes before the end of the telethon, Miami policewoman Jennifer Pastor arrived on the scene. The confrontation almost instant. A closer look at the tape shows Officer Jennifer Pastor pulling the attorney into the street. But Miami police say that Ibarra had only retreated to the sidewalk after being told she was under arrest. The crowd around her erupting in anger after witnessing the takedown.
I'm out here because I think they are provoking us.
He said that my attitude got me arrested. I didn't know that standing up for your rights in this country and having an affirmative attitude for your people was cause for arrest in the United States. We are becoming a police state.
The immigration attorney went home after being rushed to Mercy Hospital for heart palpitations. Her arrest coming on a tense-filled day. A general strike organized by Cuban exiles successfully paralyzed parts of Miami-Dade County. Hundreds of businesses were shut down in protest of the Elián seizure. 2,500 Miami-Dade County employees did not report to work. And within the Dade public school system, more than 115,000 students and 4,000 teachers did not show up. And at this hour of the night, the protests are not over. You are looking at a live picture of the city of Hialeah. This is West 49th Street between 10th Avenue and 12th Avenue, one of the main thoroughfares within the city of Hialeah. People in their cars waving Cuban and American flags, driving slower than the speed limit, basically slowing down traffic there. That is West 49th Street from 10th Avenue to 12th Avenue in the city of Hialeah. I'm told by some of my sources in Tallahassee that these conditions within the Miami-Dade County area are worrying Governor Jeb Bush, and it is possible that he may be coming to South Florida as early as tomorrow. As for the arrest of the attorney Grisel Ibarra, 2 Miami commissioners did witness that arrest. They are calling that police abuse, and they plan to complain loudly to the city manager and to the police chief on Thursday's meeting at Miami City Hall. Reporting live, I'm Lisette Campos, CBS 4 News Tonight.
Hundreds in Broward also taking part in the work stoppage. Stores including an El Dorado furniture store in Plantation and 2 Sedano supermarkets shut their doors. La Carrera restaurants in Broward also remain closed today.
Protesters also take to the street tonight on Miami Beach. Hundreds of college students caravan down Collins Avenue, then march down Ocean Drive toward the Holocaust Memorial. Many dressed in black and put tape over their mouths in silent protest.
Well, not everyone supports the protests over Elián, and those people made their feelings clear with messages in the sky. Chopper 4 getting these pictures of 3 banners. One reads, "American taxpayers support the American way." We also saw a banner that said, "If you don't support it, go back to Cuba." Another read, "God bless the INS."
People on a small boat near Miami International had a different message. They held up a sign that read, "Bill, more cigars on the way as promised. Say hi to Monica, Fidel." Traffic was affected through the area as motorists slowed up to read the sign. There are new developments tonight out of Washington, D.C. The federal government has until 4 p.m. tomorrow to explain why Elián González is being kept out of sight and away from his Miami relatives. Psychologists and lawyers. CBS 4's Michelle Gillen is live with the latest on that, as well as other developments in D.C. tonight. Michelle.
Good evening, everyone. An important deadline tomorrow. A federal court ordering the U.S. government to present evidence as to why a guardian ad litem, basically an independent advocate, should not be appointed for Elián González. This on a day when the President of the United States praised Attorney General Janet Reno for her reuniting the child with his father. And yet tonight here in Washington, there are still more protests.
Freedom! What do we want, sir? Justice!
Chants once heard in Little Havana tonight are echoing on the steps of the U.S. Justice Department. This following a morning in which the U.S. government first announced Elián had been relocated and it would not say where.
Today at 12:45 p.m., the United States Marshal Service moved Elián González and family from Andrews Air Force Base. The family is moving to an undisclosed location.
At the same time, Attorney General Janet Reno arrived for questioning today by congressmen looking for answers as to whether Saturday's armed raid was justified. Following the meeting, this reaction.
I am going to recommend to the majority leader that the Senate engage in a hearing and/or hearings with respect to the use of force.
We don't need more politics in the Elián González case. We do need some decisions made around here on issues that affect average lives of citizens in this country, such as gun control. And so I would strongly recommend that the idea of a hearing be nixed.
We have some evidence that the Justice Department just seems to be doing whatever Greg Craig wants it to do.
Meanwhile, Elián's Miami relatives attempted again to see the child at Andrews Air Force Base. They were turned away. And then it was announced that the 6-year-old already was at his new temporary home, the Aspen Institute on the Eastern Shore. Some neighbors are not thrilled.
It's easy to maintain security. I just hope he doesn't bring half of Miami with him.
While the child's transfer was kept out of sight of press cameras. Before the television cameras today, there was applause for Attorney General Janet Reno and praise from her boss, who indicated he felt there had been enough talk about Saturday's raid.
The thing that really matters now is that little boy and his life and his family. And I think at least for the next several days, the less we all say about it, and the more time he has to breathe the air of a normal life, the better.
We are told Elián will be receiving 2 visitors tomorrow at this retreat. Reportedly, his school teacher and a 10-year-old cousin from Cuba will be arriving in the United States and taken here. And we're told that 4 more visas were issued today for other young friends of Elián to be brought into this country and brought to that retreat. We're also told that the U.S. government sent in a psychiatrist today who actually met with Elián and his father to attempt to assess whether, in the government's opinion, it would be psychologically healthy for the child to meet with those Miami relatives anytime in the near future. Michelle Gillen reporting from Washington, D.C. Back to you.
Thank you, Michelle. Stay with CBS 4 News for the latest developments as the fallout continues from Elián. And back out live once again, more of the Cuban-American protests continuing.